Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. Please observe a moment of silence so the council, staff, and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. And can everyone please turn off your cell phone for the duration of the meeting? Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, please note that, and we have no minutes for today. So we're going to start first with our public meeting for as official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. And I'd like to welcome you all to this public meeting. There's a great deal of interest in this application, so I'd ask that everyone listen and be respectful. Staff will provide an overview of the application, and the applicant's agent will also provide an overview of the proposal. Our intention tonight is to have the public meeting and hear from everyone who has an interest in this application. We will gather the input and a report will be brought back to council. So to be clear, council is not making a decision tonight. Depending on the comments tonight, the next report is expected to come back to us this summer. In terms of the process, we will have those in attendance in the council chamber speak first when we come to that. And I will be asking for people who are in favor of the application to get up and speak. Then we will go to the virtual people, and it's my understanding we have 54 that are in the queue. And so we will be hearing from those people as well. I would ask that if a matter has been addressed by a previous attendee, please consider whether to raise the same thing again for the sake of time. Everyone addressing council is advised to state your name and address and speak into the mic at the podium. We'll make every effort to answer all the questions, and if you're online, make sure that you unmute and you have your camera on when your name is called. If a question has already been answered, I will note this to avoid repeating answers that have already been given. So a few items of note. We're considering the application we have before us today. We're not considering any proposal that has been talked about in the past or what might come in the future. It's what is before us today is for 40 lots. The province has also recently passed Bill 185, which among other things has changed appeal rights. Bill 185 changes will affect the appeal rights related to this application. Only public agencies and prescribed parties can appeal. This includes the applicant, specific agencies such as utilities, telecommunication companies, railways, propane operators, etc. Federal and provincial governments, ministries, or agencies and First Nations. Changes from the provincial bill mean that area residents and associations do not have the right to appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal. So I also want to welcome Keziah Holden, who is here today from the county, and online virtually, we have Terry Lambshead, who is with County Council. Welcome to the meeting. And I'm now going to turn it over to Per so that he can introduce the purpose for the meeting today. Per.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try to be terse. Thank you for covering off some of the basics there that I won't have to repeat now. The council's, there is a bit of preamble I have to introduce the meeting with, and then like the mayor has indicated, I'll provide a short overview of the application. So the councils of the County of Peterborough and the Township of Selwyn are holding a joint public meeting in accordance with Section 17 and 34 of the Planning Act in order to consider application file number C14-20 with the township and 15 OP-22011 with the county of Peterborough. These are zoning and official plan amendment applications. Again, as the mayor has stated, this is for 40 new trailer sites for Lovestick Lake Park. The prescribed notice of public meeting was provided via prepaid first-class mail to all residents within a 120-meter radius of the property, subject to the applications, as well as by a sign posted on the subject lands. The notices were also available on the county and township websites. The prescribed notice of public meeting was further provided by a notice published in the Peterborough Examiner. We also received a number of emails requesting notice of the application, and those requesting it were sent out the notice by email. The notice circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the County of Peterborough with regard to the official plan amendment, or the decision of the Council of the Township of Selwyn with regard to the zoning bylaw amendment, but does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the respective approval authority before the approval authority gives or refuses to give approval to the amendment, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the County of Peterborough or the Council of the Township of Selwyn in respect of the applications before the respective approval authority gives or refuses to give approval to the official plan amendment or the zoning amendment, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the decisions of the councils of the County of Peterborough or the Township of Selwyn in respect of the proposed amendments, you must make a written request to the County of Peterborough with regard to the official plan amendment or to the Township of Selwyn with regard to the zoning bylaw amendment, providing your name, address, or email address. Again, for those people that have submitted this request already, they are on file with us, and we will be sending out those notices of decision. So again, as the mayor has said tonight, we're just receiving my report, as well as any input from the public tonight. A decision is not currently scheduled to be made tonight. This is for information purposes only. The zoning of the property is currently rural RU zone and recreation commercial RC zone for a portion of it. The zoning will come into place as recreation commercial exception 609 holding. I'll explain a little bit more about what the holding provision is for as we get into my report. So in terms of public agencies that respond to our agency circulation, included Bell Canada, Enbridge, Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board, the Ministry of Transportation, Nexicom, and Parks Canada. These agencies had no concern. The Autonomy Region Conservation Authority submitted comments of support of the application and have no concern with the approval of the OPA and ZBA, subject to further detailed design review being required at site plan control approval stage. They've also mentioned that Conservation Authority permits are required for this project, which will be implemented the following site plan approval. In terms of public comments, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 areas that we've summarized, 9 areas of concern. These are summarized as follows. Increased traffic was a concern. This was dealt with through a traffic impact study. The traffic impact study outlines that traffic volumes are not expected to significantly increase, and therefore no turning lane, traffic signals, etc. improvements are needed for this project. Lake capacity, including boat traffic. So currently the official plan does not contain any policies regarding Lovestick Lake as being at capacity. Lake capacity studies are typically used to deal with cold water lakes and to deal with the protection of lake trout lakes. Lovestick Lake is a warm water lake. Parks Canada Trent Summer Waterway has also confirmed that no applications for increased docking space at the trailer park have been submitted. A site-specific phosphorus impact study and Ministry of Environment approval were completed for the new septic system in support of the new trailer park sites. There was also a concern with new versus existing expansion of a trailer park. Staff are of the opinion that this is an expansion as permitted by the official plan based on common ownership and adjacency to the existing trailer park. Archaeological assessment, including First Nation consultation, This was addressed through an archaeological assessment that has been completed in consultation with local First Nations. No artifacts were found. Water quality. MEC again has reviewed and approved the septic system for the proposed trailer park expansion. Then there was a concern about pollution, air, noise, and light. The township has a noise control bylaw in place. Dark sky compliant lighting can be implemented at site plan control stage as applicable for any light standards that are proposed. As posted on their website, the Lovestick Lake Park also has their own campground rules, including noise restrictions. Road safety, a traffic impact study was again submitted and peer reviewed. Through the review process of the road, it was noted that the current road is substandard and therefore road improvements will be required. Staff are of the opinion that this is needed to accommodate the new trailer park. This design will be dealt with at the site plan control stage of the development. Project creep. Like any future development on the subject lands will be subject to applicable Planning Act approvals and/or Ontario Building Code permits. Tonight, as the mayor has outlined, we're only considering what's before council tonight, which is the expansion by 40 sites. Species at risk in the environment. An environmental impact study has been submitted and reviewed containing recommended mitigation measures. Mitigation measures will be implemented through site plan control. The proponent is further subject to all applicable federal and provincial environmental legislation, including the Endangered Species Act. ORCA is requiring a shoreline restoration plan to be submitted at site plan control stage, as well as implementation of the recommendations in the EIS. So there's a couple of points that are particularly contentious that I'll just go through for council. One of them, again, being the Forest Hill Road issue. Staff indicated at the pre-consultation meeting for this project held on July 27, 2017, that any required upgrades to the road would be at the proponent's expense. This is consistent with municipal practices wherein the developer is expected to be responsible for the costs associated with its proposed development. In other words, the township does not take on the cost of improvements required to facilitate a specific development proposal. In this specific circumstance, the township roads needs study has identified the need for resurfacing on this roadway in the near term, and accordingly, it is recommended that the township consider timing this project to coincide with any other improvements needed to be made at site plan control stage by the developer, with the township contributing toward the cost of the specific component of the project. So a holding zone provision is being applied to the recommended zoning amendment, for which the removal will be conditional on site plan approval, road improvements to Forest Hill Road being completed, and a lot addition consent is approved by the County of Peterborough to ensure direct access from Forest Hill Road to the new trailer park sites. With regard to lake capacity studies, because this has been something that apparently members of council have been asked about. Staff note that the request has been the lake capacity study, as well as an interim control bylaw to prevent further development pending the completion of this study. For a local municipality to pass an ICB, council must provide direction by resolution or bylaw that a review or study be undertaken with respect to the specific land use planning policies within a defined areas. ICBs are bound by strict timelines and are appealable to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Any decision to move forward with the lake capacity assessment would at minimum require discussion and agreement from the County of Peterborough and the 3 municipalities bordering the lake. Excuse me. Selwyn, North Kawartha, and Trent Lakes. The township would not be in a position to pass an ICB until such discussions were concluded. Should the council decide to proceed with a study, then the terms of the reference of such study, including its scope, resource allocation, and timing, would need to be confirmed. Again, lake capacity studies are typically done for cold water lakes in the Precambrian shields to protect lake trout. This Lovestick Lake has none of these qualifications. If the capacity study determined that the Lovestick Lake is at capacity, depending on what the parameters of such a study would be, provincial guidelines recommend that development restrictions are implemented within a 300-meter buffer around the lake, including freezing all development, including lot creation, which could also include prohibiting expansions such as additions to existing residential dwellings. In this case, properties on Lovestick Lake as well as up and downstream properties on adjacent lakes could be impacted. Excuse me. It is very important that the impacts of such a study are understood, given the implications to all properties that would be affected by such study and would not be limited to a single site such as the Lovestick Lake Park. I'll just mention one other thing, a couple other things too, with regard to the site-specific zoning amendment that's before council for consideration. There's a couple of detailed reliefs built into the zoning amendment to accommodate the trailer parks as proposed through their site plan. Specifically, there's a setback reductions to 6 meters along the southern property boundary, which adjoins additional lands owned by the applicant, as well as further reductions for sites 1, 37, 38, and 39 on the site plan that we currently have before us. Again, to accommodate the reduction is to 3 meters to permit the park model trailers on the proposed 40 sites. And also for consistency with the township's commercial and industrial zones, we require planting strips only adjacent to residential zones. The planting strip requirement along the southern property boundary zoned rural, the applicant's adjacent land zoned rural, that planting strip would not be required. It's also noted that there's a 12.2 meter right of way on these adjacent lands abutting the subject site. And of course, like if it was to be opened and utilized at some point in the future, you couldn't obstruct that right of way. Right now, that right of way is not utilized. As far as I know, and if somebody's wondering about the history of that, and maybe Diana can confirm when you get to it, as far as township files are concerned, I believe it was associated with a plan of subdivision that was proposed back in the 1980s that never went through, and that's why that right of way is there. I do find that the application conforms to the official plan and with the amendment, as well as conforms to the growth plan for the Golden Horseshoe, and is consistent with the provincial policy statement. And those are my remarks in regard to this application, and we'll proceed now with Keziah would be next, I'd imagine.
Thank you through you, Mayor. So yeah, my name's Keziah Holden. I'm the senior planner with the County of Peterborough, and I do have Terry Lambshead online, joining me from County Council as our planning representative. Some of my comments, I'm going to try and keep it fairly brief, but they do overlap with Pear's comments a little bit. So I apologize for any duplication. So the County of Peterborough is the approval authority for official plan amendments to the local component of the county official plan. The county is in receipt of an application for an official plan amendment, which has been assigned file number 15 OP 22011 for lands located at 3340 Strickers Lane in Smith Ward. In accordance with Planning Act requirements, notice of complete application and notice of public meeting was provided to all public agencies and circulated to adjacent property owners. Notice was also sent directly to those who requested to receive them. It was posted in the Peterborough Examiner, and it has been posted on both the county and township websites, along with a full copy of the draft amendment and supporting studies. Just a note to anybody here tonight, if you wish to be notified of decision for this amendment and you have not already done so, please submit a request in writing to myself at the county or to Pear at the township. But if you've already submitted that request, we've already got your name on a list, so you don't need to do that again. The subject lands are currently designated rural, seasonal residential, and environmental constraint in the official plan. And the purpose of the official plan amendment is to change the rural and seasonal residential designations on the property to the trailer park designation. This change would permit an expansion of up to 40 trailer sites to the current Lovestick Lake Trailer Park. An internal roadway connects the proposed expansion to the existing park. There are no changes proposed to those areas that are already designated environmental constraint. In addition, a future severance application for the purposes of a small lot addition is required, which would allow the expansion to obtain access from Forest Hill Road. A number of studies have been submitted in support of the applications, including a planning justification report, a functional servicing report, environmental impact study, slope assessment, a traffic impact study, phosphorus impact assessment, and an archaeological assessment. These studies have been peer reviewed either by the township's peer review consultant or the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority as applicable. And after a lengthy review process, those studies have been found to be satisfactory, with some requiring additional work to be completed during the detailed design stage. So those works are proposed to be managed through zoning or site plan approval. The exception to the peer review process are the archaeological assessments, which have been reviewed by the Provincial Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism as a condition of the archaeologist's licensing. The ministry has indicated that those assessments have been entered into their register. The Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks has also issued an environmental compliance approval for sewage works on the site, which includes a sewage treatment system that would service both the existing park and the proposed expansion. The ministry's approval was based on the review of an application that was made to the ministry and the supporting documentation, including the phosphorus assessment. The ministry's approval contains a number of terms and conditions that must be met to the satisfaction of the ministry. So those conditions include specific requirements for construction, monitoring and recording, operations and maintenance, and reporting on the system. Several other agencies have also reviewed the applications and have indicated there are no concerns in their latest comments, and those agencies include the Ministry of Transportation, Trent Severn Waterway, Enbridge Gas, Bell Canada, the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board, Nexicom, and as I mentioned, the Conservation Authority has also provided comments with additional work to be done at the detailed design stage. As council is aware, in response to the notices circulated under the Planning Act, both the county and township are in receipt of a significant number of letters of concern from members of the public, and I believe council should have a copy of those letters in your agenda package. The primary areas of concern include increased traffic and road safety on Forest Hill Road, lake capacity and water quality, project creep, stormwater and wastewater management and discharge, environmental impact, shoreline restoration and species at risk, archaeological impact and First Nation consultation, and air, noise, and light pollution. So those submissions now form part of the public record and will be considered as part of the decision-making process. And as far as next steps go, as with the official plan amendment, we would be seeking a recommendation from Township Council with regards to the amendment. Once that is received, a county planning department will prepare a report for county council, and then county council will make the decision on the official plan amendment. As standard practice, there is a 20-day appeal period for the official plan amendment, and then if the appeal period expires with no appeals, then it would be in force and effect after that 20-day appeal period. And I just again would remind anybody that if you want to receive that notice of decision, to give your name to myself or pair with your contact information, and we'll make sure that that notice is sent to you directly. So that's all I have for right now, but I'm happy to hear any questions or comments from council.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Keziah. And now we will be hearing from Donna Kie from DM Wells.
Thank you. Through you, your worship, and council, thank you for having me here today. My name is Diana Kay. I'm a principal planner with DM Wells Associates Limited, located on 150 Jamieson Street in Peterborough. I'm also here on behalf of my client, Lovestick Lake Beach Limited. We have been carrying this file since late 2002, but was fully retained in January of 2023 to assume carriage of the file and bring it forward. There is a formal presentation that I prepared today for everybody. I will skim through some of it and spend some more time on other parts just to provide some information and background. I know this is a very contentious item and that there's a lot of discussion on some particular items. So I'd like to spend more time on those items rather than others to ensure that we're addressing the comments today, as well as how we've addressed them in the past. I guess I have control of this, so I should. Oh. There's a delay. Sorry about that. I promise I know how to use this. All right. So this is just a brief overview of the presentation. I'm going to spend most of the time on the site plan because that offers a lot of information. The site plan was specifically designed based on the technical studies. And of course, there will be additional approval process. So I'll go into that of what we're asking for today, in addition to what will be required later on. I'd like to spend some time on the recommendations of those technical studies. I think it's important to note what they said and how it formed in designing the site plan as you see it today. I'll do a little bit of the project history just because originally the application was for 46 sites, but there's a reason why it's only 40 now. And of course, I'd like to go through public consultation and Indigenous consultation. I want to make sure that we have another opportunity to discuss, especially the Indigenous consultation, how that came about. And then, of course, the proposed amendments and recommendations that we're putting forward. The road upgrades, while I don't expect any decisions today, we will be consulting with the manager of public works, Mr. Tobin, and of course engage to ensure that we are going through that process properly. There are a few items that were addressed in staff's report. I didn't have a chance to review it until today, just after noon. Thank you to Mr. Longberg for providing me with a copy. There's a few items in there, one that I want to correct and two that I want to speak to, just to ensure that everyone understands the what it means and the implications of some of the stuff being said in staff's report. And then, of course, I'm here for questions from members of council and members of the public. So to get right into it, there's a bit of a lag. There we go. So the subject property, this encompasses all the existing and the proposed. It's located at 3340 Strickers Lane. It is south of Lovestick Lake, and there is access to the existing site from Highway 28. But because MTO doesn't allow any new entrances, they've compelled us to use Forest Hill Road, which is why we have an additional extension that is required via lot addition to add additional lands to provide frontage and access from Forest Hill Road. So the next figure you'll see, this is actually the subject site to be developed with the 40 proposed trailer sites. It includes the area to have frontage along Forest Hill Road. The minimum frontage will be a minimum of 100 meters, I believe. So we'll ensure that we maintain the zoning requirements to avoid any future applications, and also because there is land there to accommodate that. So in red is the area that is being proposed for development as the expansion too. The land in between is a very steep, I don't know if I can use my laser pointer. Thank you, Your Worship, for moving out of the way. I don't want to get you. This area right here, this is a very steep slope. So there's no development happening here. So just a brief overview, we're looking for 40 additional permanent sites. These are for park model trailers, so not RVs and not camper trailers. These will be sites that are, or trailers that are on site and will remain on site. So they're not going to be moving in and out of the park itself. They will be fixed into the site once they're sited properly. There's an internal roadway, although it's being considered as a driveway to access from Forest Hill Road. A new communal system will be required in order to support the development. This will be connected to the existing holding tanks as well as new holding tanks in order to support the additional development. As Ms. Holden has already indicated, we did receive an ECA from the ministry back in June of last year. So it's been a year now that we've received the ECA approval. And we're also proposing to connect to the existing private on-site lake water treatment system. New on-site parking is proposed for each site, plus additional visitor parking for any minor overflows. A garbage enclosure will also be required, so that way garbage is properly disposed of on site. And we have provided vegetation buffers between each site in order to provide more of a natural environmental aesthetic, as well as to ensure that there's privacy between one site and the next. So today we're looking for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. I won't reiterate it. Both Mr. Lundberg and Ms. Holden has already identified what's required. This is some of the project history. It started off in 2017, number of iterations. Skip forward to today. So an application in 2022 was submitted for 46 sites. Typically what triggers the amount of development on private services is the septic. And in this case, because we need a private communal system and because we need to have a reserve area as per ministry standards. So we're looking at a tertiary system, which is not new technology, but the ministry always likes a backup. In the event that the tertiary system fails, we have enough room for a conventional system. So in order to accommodate that, we had to get rid of 5 additional sites in order to allow for the additional reserve area. So we always have that room for more septic in the event, or for a conventional septic in the event it's required. At the public meeting or the open house, that we had with the public, we did offer some current projects that are going on in Ontario that demonstrate these systems have been tried, tested, and true. Again, they're not new. I will say they're not loved by all municipalities, but there's a lot of evidence out there that demonstrates that the systems are more than capable of handling the treatment. And again, we have to offer reserve area. So that's how we got to 40 sites. It was triggered by the septic. In addition to that, we have updated a lot of the studies, mostly in response to the public comments that we received. And this is specific to the EIS and the environmental impact study, the archaeological study, and the traffic study. We did a brand new study for traffic. And so if approved, the development will have to be phased. So based on the ECA, there will be 38 sites that are permitted, and they have to be monitored for a minimum of 3 years. And there's a bunch of standards that you have to meet and demonstrate to the ministry and submit to them to ensure that the system is operating properly. Phase 2 would then be not until 2027, subject to the positive results of the monitoring. So we'll have to amend the ECA for the 2 additional sites, plus the site plan for the 2 additional sites. The site plan, I'm going to spend some time on this. So what you see before you is that red area, that hashed area that we talked about. You can see the escarpment, how steep it is, a little bit better on this plan with the contours available. So Forest Hill is right here. And then you see this orange line. That is where we're proposing the internal road network. This is the... Thank you, through your worship. I'll just go through it again. So this is Forest Hill Road. And the internal roadway that we're proposing is this yellow line right in here. This is the septic field, and this would be the septic tank. This is the reserve area that the ministry is requiring us to have. So there is now 40 proposed sites for park model trailers. This area here is a 6-meter setback that has been imposed as a result of the results from the slope stability assessment. So from top of slope to the, I guess the property line in quotations, because it's a site, it's not a lot. We have to be 6 meters away from the top of slope. So we've incorporated that. Everything in green is the vegetative buffer that we are proposing in between each site. Much like the existing site, the intent here is to remove the least amount of trees as possible. Tree removal will only be to accommodate the trailer, a deck, and some parking spaces. And in this case, the maximum 2 spaces. Everything else in terms of vegetation will remain. There's really no benefit to remove any of the trees other than what's required to site the trailers. The purple dots, these were indicated as wildlife trees, so trees that could provide potential habitat. So we've ensured that we've incorporated into the site plan so we know where they are. They will be implemented at site plan to ensure that when the site is constructed, that those trees remain. So we cannot remove them because they will provide habitat for species. Most of the sites are not impacted by these trees. If anything, it's 34 and 35, and one tree is already in the 6-meter buffer from top of slope, so that will remain anyway. And the other one is in the vegetative buffer, which will also remain. There are 3 butternut trees that were also identified on site with their buffer area, and those will be required to remain. And from the addendum EIS, you'll notice there's an orange triangle here on site 32. The EIS indicated that there is potential for the pileated woodpecker habitat, and that is a protected species. So we have to monitor that tree for 36 months. So we cannot use site 32 until such time as the monitoring is complete and it demonstrates that the tree is not suitable for habitat. There are some other mechanisms that we can go through, but that would really be a site plan issue to ensure that 1, we're monitoring it, and 2, depending on the results, that we will handle it accordingly. So that is the site plan. Overall, the individual sites you see are here. So typically they're about 11 meters by 18 meters with the 6-meter vegetative buffer in between, and then a potential placement of a trailer, the deck, and a parking spot as well. These are the list of studies that were required in support of the application, which Ms. Holden already provided, so I won't reiterate, but I will go through the results of them because they are important. So with respect to the environmental impact study, I already talked about the pileated woodpecker, which means that site 32 has to be monitored for the next 36 months, and we cannot use that site until then. There is no development that is proposed within 30 meters of the shoreline, so that is not a concern. The EIS indicated that there will be no negative impacts to the surrounding natural heritage features, and we will be required to submit a tree inventory and preservation plan, and that will be required at site plan. ORCA is looking for 60% tree canopy coverage. So in order to demonstrate that, we'll have to create a very detailed plan at site plan to demonstrate how that can be achieved. And as I mentioned, the intent here is to remove minimal trees as possible. The functional servicing report dealt with stormwater management, and it is recommended that a vegetative ditch be installed on the south limits of the internal gravel road. So we'll have to design that at site plan to ensure that stormwater management quality and quantity are controlled properly. All of the studies that will have to be resubmitted for detailed design at site plan, again, will have to be peer reviewed by the township and county's peer reviewer. With respect to water services, because there's no domestic water, like I mentioned before, we will utilize the existing private water supply system from the Lovestick Lake Trailer Park. The slope assessment just recommended a 6-meter setback from the top of slope, which we have applied to the site plan. So the traffic impact study, there's one thing I wanted to clarify from the staff's report, but really that's for road improvement, so I'll wait. The traffic impact study, the point of these studies is really just to review vehicular traffic. They don't deal with road improvements. So based on the traffic impact study, it was demonstrated that there will be very minimal impacts as a result of increased traffic. We're looking at maybe 12 vehicles peak hour on a Friday, 16 vehicles peak hour on a Saturday. So very minimal in terms of impacts. It also showed that with existing conditions, without the development, and potential conditions with the development, the level of service did not change in terms of operating on the road. So it demonstrates that the levels are still good. The traffic impact study also looked at a 10-year horizon. Same thing, while the level of service will decrease with or without this development, and that's assuming there's no improvements being done to this road, the level of service is maintained with or without the development. So the development has very little change in terms of traffic service levels on the site. Now, the staff report indicated that the road improvements are required as a result of the additional development. That is not true. The traffic impact study does not say that. It didn't look at that. That's not the intent of the traffic impact study. It did mention, however, that the existing Forest Hill Road is deficient and that the township should be reviewing this because you currently have about 40 existing cottages plus Forest Hill Resort that are currently utilizing a road that is deficient. So while our client will be contributing to the traffic, they have not created the deficiency. It exists there today. But I'll get into the road upgrades a little bit later. I want to also say with respect to the EIS, there were public comments with respect to additional areas being reviewed. So we did do an addendum to cover those areas. And we've incorporated the recommendations into the site plan from the addendum report. The traffic impact study, there were comments with respect to the traffic impact study being done at a time where it was out of season. During COVID, it wasn't appropriate. So we commissioned our client to have the study redone, which we did last year in July, and a new study was submitted to staff in August of 2023, which shows the same results. The archaeological assessment was another study where we heard public feedback that it was not done to the full extent of the property. So again, we commissioned a new archaeologist to review the balance of the property. In addition and like the original application, the additional area did not show any archaeological material remains, and that was submitted to the ministry as well. I already talked about the environmental compliance approvals. So we did submit this back to the ministry. They provided some comments with respect to the phosphorus reduction system. So we implemented a plan and resubmitted that back to the ministry, which they have approved. And they also provided the ECA back in June of last year. So the site with respect to the septic system is approved for 38 park model trailer sites. Again, the addendum will happen with the final 2 after the monitoring program. So again, the development would happen in 2 phases. We held a public open house in May of 2023. We held it at the Burleigh Falls. It was from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. We invited all interested stakeholders to attend the meeting, ask questions of the consulting team. We provided notices via regular mail and email no later than 7 days prior to the event. We also placed an advertisement in the local paper in the event that we didn't have certain contact information for some of the interested stakeholders. The open house was well attended. It was originally an informal session, so we had poster boards, information packages, and comment sheets. Comment sheets were given to people so that way if they thought of something after the meeting, they could write in back to us. About halfway through, it turned into a formal Q&A at the request of some of the attendees. So then we switched the approach to the meeting, and we offered the opportunity for residents and any interested stakeholders to ask questions specifically of people from the consulting team with respect to their concerns. All of this was summarized in a consultation report that was provided to staff in our resubmission. And in addition, we also prepared a very lengthy comment response matrix. So all the comments that we received, not just from the agencies, but from members of the public, we've responded to every single one. And we offered that to the township, the county, and to the residents that were on our contact list that wanted to be notified and engage more in the process. So some of the common themes, in addition to what was already provided by Mr. Lundberg and Ms. Holden. Phosphorus loading, yes, we understood that was a major concern. We addressed that through the ministry. The ECA was issued. We will have to be monitoring the septic system to ensure that there's no issues. I'd like to remind council and members of the public that this is newer technology, and that's been tried and tested. You know, there's a lot of older septic systems out there that aren't producing the kind of filtering that the new systems will produce. So there was some discussion with respect to effluent in the lake, and that will be dealt with through the monitoring program. Tree canopy and vegetation, I already spoke to that. ORCA is looking for 60% coverage, which is something we'll have to provide in detail at the time of site plan. Traffic and road conditions, already addressed that, but into the next slide, I'll get into the road conditions. No new docks are being proposed. What is there is what will remain. So there won't be any existing docks for the new potential owners of these sites. There is a public launch, and if they want to either utilize the existing docks or the public launch, they're free to do that. I mean, any member of the public is free to use the public launch and go around the lake. Increased use of the lake and property standards. There are other bylaws with respect to property standards. You can't really monitor the use of the lake, especially when there's a public launch. The lake is for the public. I know there is an attachment when you own a lot on a lake that you feel that stewardship in order to maintain it, but you can't really monitor from one day to the next when it's a public lake who's going to be on there and who won't. With respect to number of vehicles and people on site, I won't speak to people on site. We don't zone for people. Plain and simple. Number of vehicles, we have enough parking to ensure that we meet the standards that are required. So there's parking available for the people who will be utilizing the sites. The consultation process, I understand, especially with the Indigenous community, they felt that there was not enough consultation. Prior to DM Wells taking carriage of the file, we understood that there was a meeting set up with Curve Lake First Nation. Unfortunately, nobody attended. I'm not going to speak too much about that because I wasn't there and I don't know. But I can say that after we assumed carriage of the file, we reached out to Curve Lake First Nation numerous times. Unfortunately, they didn't have any staff, and they had a consulting team there that said, just start to document everything that you're doing and how many times you're reaching out to us, because that's the only thing that we could really do at that time. But I will say that as part of the archaeological assessment update, the archaeologist did consult with Alderville First Nation because a lot of the former Curve Lake Nation members had moved there. So we did have consultation with First Nation, at least through the updates to the assessment, so we can get some feedback with respect to how the study was undertaken and any additional comments or information that they have. And the intensity of the development, like I said, it's being driven by the septic. So 40 is all we can get on this site. Oops. Just quickly, some of the other planning applications. So if the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment are approved, will also be subject to site plan control and consent for the lot addition to facilitate access from Forest Hill Road. This will all be through a holding symbol, as Mr. Lundberg has already identified that being part of the zoning, a holding symbol will be placed on site, which means we can't have any development or any permits cannot be issued until we remove the holding, and we can't remove the holding until we complete site plan control and the consent for the lot addition. So the road upgrade, this has been contentious only because there has been some discussion with township staff. And while I appreciate that, you know, this is a deficient road and that they acknowledge the fact that we are contributing to the vehicles on the road, this is an existing situation. So while my client understands that his contribution isn't zero, it's also not 100, because you already have existing development that haven't paid into upgrading this road, but have been using this deficient road for their own purpose for many, many years. So the expectation is that there is some cost sharing. So again, we know it's not zero, but it's definitely not 100. If the deficiencies were driven by the development and were caused by the development, I would absolutely understand 100%. But in this case, through site plan approval, we'll have to continue to have those discussions and negotiations with the township to understand, based on study, what upgrades are appropriate and who should be sharing the cost of that. So I know that this is a deferral back to staff. I'm still going to respectfully request that the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, or at least the zoning bylaw amendment today, gets approved. We have been doing this for a number of years. Specifically, DM Wills Planning has been working on this for the past year and a half. We've consulted with the public. We've updated our studies based on those comments. We have responded to every single comment. We have designed and redesigned the site based on the studies and based on the comments that we have received. The comments that we have received have been no different than what we originally addressed. And I'm not sure that we're in a position at this point that there's anything new. And now I understand that the lake capacity study is a big issue. It was not required by the township. It's not driven by individual site development. It really is an issue when it becomes a cold water lake. Then perhaps if there's proposed development, the proponent would be required to submit a lake capacity study, but that's not the case here. So I'm not even sure what the terms of reference or the scope of the study would actually be. If there was motivation for the township feeling compelled to do this type of study, it would have to be above and beyond being triggered by a site-specific development. It would have to be something that the township and its neighboring municipalities would be interested in doing. And it would be initiated by the municipality, not by my client or by a new proponent. The interim control bylaw was the first I heard or read about it in staff's report. I'm not sure where it came from. It doesn't really matter. It is a planning tool that's available in the Planning Act, but it is a very specific type of tool. And it's never initiated based on a site-specific basis. It is initiated when a municipality feels like it needs to study a specific land use within their municipality. It is appealable. The issue that we might have at this point is because we feel that we have addressed all the comments, because we have updated all of our reports and our site plan based on the recommendations and the fact that we still have to go through additional approvals, we have done everything that we're supposed to do. My client has done everything that they're supposed to do to demonstrate that the use is appropriate. And so we would respectfully recommend that the zoning bylaw amendment get approved today. I'm still going to ask, even though I know this is for information only. And that if an interim control bylaw is put in place, we'll have to have a different discussion. It puts us at risk where we're going to have to appeal that because we don't feel that it's appropriate to hold my client's development hostage, I guess, to implement a new plan, especially when it's a municipally specific type of plan. In addition, we are way over the appeal period. My client does not want to appeal the application. That is not his intent. He's been working with the township and the county. We've been working with the township and the county and members of the public. But we're at a point where the risk is we'll have to appeal the tribunal for lack of decision if it comes down to that. But it's not what we want, of course. And I've already mentioned all of this, so thank you for your time. I'm probably well over 10 minutes, but I appreciate that. So I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Right. Well, I hope you stick around.
Oh, yeah.
So we are now going to move into the public portion where we have members of the public that want to speak, first of all, in favor of this application. If you can go up to the podium, give your name, address, and give us your statement. And this is in regard to being in favor of this application. So you have to go to the microphone over here, sir, and give us your name and address for the record.
Bonjour. Nodin Addition Cause, Chichok and Dodem, Burley Falls and Donjaba, Fourth Anishinaabe First Nation in Donjaba, Miigwetchuandum Nongum. Now, in my language, that translates into yours as my name is Nodin. I'm from the Crane clan. I'm from Fourth Anishinaabe First Nation, and I live in Burley Falls, and I'm thankful for the day that we're having today. First and foremost, I do not agree with this, and I'll explain why. And the reason is that there is many things I need to address, many untruths that were just said here. I heard that Indigenous consultations had been done. They had been done with other First Nations, not Kawartha Anishinaabe First Nation. Now, Kawartha Anishinaabe First Nation is the very First Nation that inhabits Burley Falls. That is Lovestick Lake. That being said, it is our First Nation who has always held stewardship to those lands and protected those waters for time immemorial. The fact that we have not been consulted on this is disturbing, to say the least. We have been trying our very best to reach out to the owners of Lovestick Lake RV Park and Sales. They continue to disregard us. What I'm also concerned about seeing is that our cease and desist order was not mentioned. And we did issue that at the end of that open house, May of last year. The reason why we issued that cease and desist order is because our First Nation had not been consulted. Every First Nation whose harvesting and homesteading rights who could be impacted on an expansion or a project must be consulted. Our First Nation was not. That means that we must be consulted before this continues. And that is why we issued the cease and desist order, so we could be properly consulted with. That cease and desist order still stands. And I don't understand why it hasn't even been mentioned. Why has our First Nation not been mentioned? And I've read that we're only limited to one question. I'll remind you that you're on Treaty 20 Mississauga First Nation territory. That is my territory, and I will speak and ask however many questions I feel is necessary. Many concerns, many concerns from my people about this expansion. And I'm not surprised that they keep on trying to dodge us and not talk to us, because they know that we don't support this. And the reason why is because we steward to these waters, and we always have. Our people know what will happen if this expansion continues. You say it's 40 trailer park sites. Let's do some numbers real quick. You got 40 sites, and you got visitor parking and parking for that family. Let's just do some simple numbers. Let's say you have a small family of 4, and they have some visitors, perhaps another small family of 4. That's 8 people, perhaps on that site, even more. That's getting into well over 300 occupants more on our very small Lovestick Lake. When you're getting into the numbers in the hundreds like that, You're starting to dwarf out the numbers of our very own First Nation people who are trying to make a living and harvest from our lands. Of course, that's a direct impact on our harvesting rights. What about the pickerel? What about all of the other fish life? What about the safety of our waters? We shouldn't be consulted on that. It's illegal to not consult with all of the Indigenous First Nations. You have a duty to consult with us. It is not an option. Again, why we had to issue our cease and desist order. This lack of respect, it continues. It's almost as if history has repeated itself today. We didn't get an invitation to this meeting. When I heard everybody's questions and concerns have been answered, I'm sitting there biting my tongue, respectfully waiting to speak, because none of ours have been spoken to. We haven't had any consultation on any of our concerns regarding this matter. And the fact of the matter is, this public meeting should not have even been held until proper Indigenous consultation occurred. Now, our people were the First Nation. Let that settle in for a second. First Nation. We were here first, and we have taken care of these lands. That feeling goes in our blood. It isn't a question. We are here to steward to these lands and ensure for our future generations that those waters are kept safe and that our future generations can eat healthy pickerel as we do, as our ancestors have before us. When things like this trailer park come into play, it is a direct impact to our harvesting rights. Now, maybe some people don't care about that because we are a warm water lake. Heaven forbid, hey? I guess warm water lakes aren't that important compared to cold water lakes. I'm sorry we don't have lake trout.
Hi, please.
Fact of the matter is, of course, our First Nation would want a proper lake assessment done. That's a given. If you asked our opinions on it, we've lived this lake. Those waters have flown through my veins long before I took my first breath on this world. My mother occupied those waters. I breathed those waters in the womb. To say that they mean something to me is quite an understatement. That lake is like a second mother to me, and I will ensure she's safe. I can promise you that. And right here, this doesn't sound safe. We know what can happen. Sure, you got 40 parks, new trailer sites. Let's say that were to get approved, which, let me tell you, our First Nation is not going to allow. Let's say you did, though. You get 40. You go through all of this process. You get all your check boxes clicked. You think it's going to stop there? No. You're going to get more trailers. They're going to keep coming in. You get 1 foot in the door, you get 2. It keeps on going. You know what I've heard from these owners that I find even more shocking? When I raise my concerns about the environment, they tell me that they're going to make the environment better, that they're going to make this lake healthier, as if they were the great creator or Gajamanado themselves. I don't understand it. You're going to add hundreds more people here onto our lake, taxing the resources, claiming fishing. It's depleting our harvesting. It is a direct impact to our harvesting rights. But does that concern them? No. They would rather consult with every other First Nation than the one that's right here when it's our land. And it's a shame because obviously we are the most impacted. Now, Curve Lake has a right to consultation, as does Alderville, as does any Mississauga Treaty 21st Nation. But in regards to Burley Falls, Lovestick Lake, the Stony Lake harvesting area of the pickerel, Kawartha Anishinaabe First Nation does have final say. That is our homesteading land, our territory, and our place where we harvest and where we live. Nobody is more impacted, and that is why we protect it above all else.
Can I just interrupt for a minute, please? I would like to ask the question of both our planner and a question of the consultant for the applicant as to was this group consulted, and if not, why not? Per, can you please start?
Yeah, so in terms of the Planning Act and circulation, there's specific requirements under that for notice to be given to First Nations. So there's specific requirements under the Planning Act for First Nations to be consulted, specifically the chief of the First Nations. We have made that circulation to Curve Lake First Nation, which is, to my understanding, the legislated required First Nation in our area.
Mhm.
Diana, maybe you can speak further to the First Nation consultation in detail with regard to this project.
And Diane, you'll have to go up to the mic because we're online and no one can hear you unless you're on the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you through you, your worship. So we do have the solicitor for Kawartha Anishinaabe on our contact list. I have documentation that the previous consultant did reach out to that solicitor. I've also reached out to that solicitor. I was not able to connect to actually get a meeting. So unfortunately, we did make a lot of attempts, but never connected with the solicitor to actually have that meeting. We still address the comments through the comments matrix. To be quite frank, we've consulted to the extent possible. We went as far as hiring our own Indigenous solicitor to ensure that we were approaching the scenario appropriately and that we were ensuring that we were consulting thoroughly, to which we've received legal feedback that we are, and to continue to do what we're doing. So I do not have any concerns with respect to the amount of consultation and effort that we've put in to reach out to Kawartha Anishinaabe solicitor to provide us with feedback and comment, and to be able to sit down and meet with the group themselves. And I already mentioned what happened with Curve Lake First Nation, which is why we also reached out to Alderville to provide us with some feedback as well.
Okay, the fact that this gentleman's here tonight, maybe you can exchange cards if you have such a thing, and maybe have a little discussion. Thank you very much for your answer. And sir, there are a lot of people who want to speak tonight. There are 50 that are online.
I understand.
So I'm going to,
I'm going to continue. I appreciate your words. Now, the thing is, I don't know who this person was that you reached out to.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
This is
I
Treaty
just-
20 land. I
excuse
have a
me.
right to speak here.
You have the right to speak, but so do the other people that are here
I have not
tonight.
finished what I need to speak, and I will here on my land. You cannot silence me. Those days are done.
Well, I am here to tell you that there are other people who have
And they
the
may
right
speak
as
up.
well. And well, they can't speak up because a lot of them are online waiting patiently. We have 50 people waiting online to speak,
And
sir.
perhaps you should let me continue, and then they will get their
Well,
chance
if you're
after.
going to be quick about it, yes, because you've been repeating yourself since you stood up there, sir. And I have tried to address one of your problems. Is there another one?
I'm not sure who the solicitor is that this person has tried to contact, but they have not contacted any of our council members or our lawyers. So we don't know who this person is that she's trying to contact. Now, I can assure everybody here, I am in active consultations weekly. I check every email. I'm not missing anything from Lovestick Lake. I do consultations on much things involving Treaty 20, all the way from Toronto to the Mississippi Valley. That involves the M&R, parks. Trust me, everybody knows how to get a hold of Kawartha Anishinaabe First Nation, apparently, except for Lovestick Lake RV sales, because we have archaeological members of our community going and monitoring these archaeological assessments that we didn't even get invited to here. Now, we would have had one of our members up there actually being able to say, yes, this is a proper archaeological assessment, because we don't have any of our members able to say that that was the case, because we never got consulted. We never got invited. And when I see there that no items were found, I find that a little hard to believe, given the amount of items that are found right down below by many of the locals. And it's not hearsay. The evidence is there. We have them. So you're telling me that all of these artifacts that are down there, right by the escarpment, and now we go up above and there's just absolutely nothing. You're trying to tell me that my First Nation, my ancestors, had no relevance to that land, so close to the Burley Falls, our healing waters. Those Burley Falls, healing waters, go far beyond any settler understanding of the importance to our people. To think that our First Nation wouldn't have occupied these lands, it's ridiculous.
I don't think anyone is trying to say that, sir. And from what I understand, it appears that there was some problem with communication. Both of you are here today. Maybe you can share your information, your contact information, and have that chat.
You know,
But
that would
I-
be nice.
yeah,
We've done that before. We did that with the owners and we exchanged. I've sent them many emails saying this is our contact information,
Yeah.
including our lawyers, because they continue to ignore us. We got our lawyers involved. They ignore them too. I don't think it's going to be any different. The fact of the matter is that our First Nation issued that cease and desist order, and that cease and desist order still stands. So even though you guys are getting all your check boxes approved, if you think you're going to get approval tonight, again, it's not going to happen. Our First Nation respects the law of the land, and that includes protecting it. Now, that means that we will prevent this from happening if you go ahead and try your construction while we have issued our cease and desist order. That is direct impact to our harvesting rights, and we will defend our land.
So, sir, we are not making a decision tonight. One of the reasons is we want to hear from all the members of the public. Right now, you're standing at a microphone that is not allowing the other members to get up and say their piece. And I would really appreciate it if you would please take a seat now and allow them to speak. They have just as much right as you do, sir.
I didn't say they didn't. And I have every right to say everything that I need to say. You don't get to mute me. You don't get to silence me. I've said what I need to say here. Some things needed to be known to everybody here. Just about the amount of untruths given. I have a right to speak, as does everybody else, and I'll let
Yes.
them speak.
But you have spoken now. Is there anything else you wish to add? Because we do have other people. Quite a
No.
number.
Miigwech, thank you for listening. The cease and desist order still stands by Kawartha Anishinaabe First Nation. Anyone who tries to go ahead and do construction, you will be stopped by our First Nation. Miigwech.
Thank you. All right, I would ask too that you not, that you refrain from clapping. There is a sense of decorum that is in this meeting, and it doesn't include applause. So is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Now is your opportunity to take the microphone. Seeing none, I will go to people who are seeking to speak against it. If you would like to speak, you have to take turns at the mic, and please give your name and address. And I would ask again that you show respect by not repeating over and over again the same issues.
No, I just have a question.
Yes.
The lady was talking
Name,
about,
sir?
my name is Matt Bedard. Thank you. I'm one of the owners. I own the Forest Hill Lodge with my wife, 2959 Forest Hill Lodge, about 300 feet away from the property in question. My question is, they have found a lot of archaeological. We did an archaeological. Sorry, I'm a little nervous here. We did an archaeological study just recently, and they found a lot of artifacts of significance on our property, approximately 300 meters from the property in question. So I know a little bit about archaeological studies. My question is, you said that you went through the trouble to do a level 2 archaeological study, but that consisted of only 2 1-meter holes on the whole property, if I understood it correctly. So can you explain to me how you can say that digging 2 1-meter holes on this entire property is a relevant sampling size to identify that there's been no artifacts found? Because we had to do 650 holes on our property, and then we follow with another 35 holes in a very small area. So can you explain to me why 2 holes is a nice sampling size for such a study?
Donna, can you please take the mic?
Thank you through you, Your Worship. That is not correct. I implore everyone to read the studies that have been submitted to the county. They're available on the website. We did one study and then an additional study to expand the area. I'm not an archaeologist. The results are demonstrated in the reports themselves, and the practices that they went through in order to determine whether or not there were any archaeological remains. All I can say is that both reports concluded that no materials were found. The reports were registered with the ministry, so they undertook the field investigations as required through their protocol. So I would just recommend that people read the reports that are available to them, because it was definitely more than 2 test holes. The second study included additional lands. So you can't say it was just 2. Both studies need to be considered. We studied additional areas in order to address the certain area that we received comments on that people felt should have also been assessed. So the second report and does additional assessment of additional area, but it is not the report for the complete site. So that's incorrect. Just wanted to let you know that it is in addition to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there someone else? Sorry?
Was a diver hired?
Can you please go to the mic, give your name and your address, please? There's a reason why we go through this process.
Bob Wissenham, 540 Fisher Lane in Gurrow-Dormer.
Yes.
And as with the Fraser estate, I remember when the archaeologist there made her statement and all was supposed to be well. The immediate question thereafter was a diver hired? And she seemed flabbergasted. I think she didn't know that with the damming and so on and so forth, the area out from the shoreline to a depth of 7 feet would not have been covered by water at that time. And so they should have had a diver hired to check there as well.
Thank you. And would you like to take the microphone, Donna?
Diane.
Diana.
For you, your worship. I've been called worse, so it's fine. With respect to the diver, my reaction was because we're only required to assess the area that is being proposed for development and the entirety of that area. We're not proposing any development along the shoreline. So any additional assessment would be triggered through the findings on site. So it was not a requirement based on both of the archaeologists that we, one, assess the shoreline because we're not developing there, and two, the stage 1 and 2 assessment indicated that because no materials were found, a further investigation is not required.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have another question? Your name and your address, sir?
Yes, good evening. My name is David Kubica from 2885 Spring Lane. And picking up on what our First Nations brother had to say, my comment was not on the matrix and nor was it addressed. And that concerns the suitability of said client as to their stewardship of the land and water. When they have a proven track record of operating by forgiveness rather than permission. And I can cite many examples. I go to her first image, which she projected with a satellite map. I'm not sure if that's still accessible, but I would draw people's attention to the stark white line that traces up the side of one of our natural heritage features, which they speak of protecting, in which heavy equipment came in and excavated through that escarpment with no permitting, operating by forgiveness and not permission. Entries from the highway, even selling units without a retailing permit, dumping sand into the lake to rebrand as a beach resort with no permit from Orca. Not being able to manage the clients that they bring in already, and the number of altercations that are being caused by those clients. Their track record does not, in my mind, make them good candidates to take on a further or expanded role in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that. No. No.
Well, through your worship, I could answer that if you want just
Sure.
a short
Yep.
thought on that. So the township has to obviously review applications if they're submitted. We have to go through the process. If somebody is participating in a legal process, we process them regardless of what their track record is on other developments that have occurred on the property. We have to honor their legislated rights to apply for development. And so that process has been followed with regard to these particular 40 sites. As Diana has reiterated, application has been made. A number of reports have been submitted and reviewed as part of that application. We've gone through the peer review process on those reports and are now at this stage of the application where we invite people to have our public meeting.
Thank you.
If I may, please, this goes back prior to these applications. It's like we have drawn a line in the sand and we are considering everything that's happened since then and nothing before. And I go back to the previous council when Mr. Mitchell was invited as a guest at our Cottage Association meeting annually. And he was informed of the things that were happening on that site. He was told specifically what was happening without applications, and he turned a deaf ear to it.
Okay, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, but again, when we're dealing with what's in front of us, we can't really look at the other aspects of it. The reason it's,
Hey.
well,
The owners are still the same.
Yes.
I hear
We're
what you're,
dealing with the same people, cut from the same cloth.
I hear you. Thank you. Yeah, no. Yes,
Thank you, Mayor Senes and council. Thank you for your time this evening.
have your name and your address, please.
Yes, my name's Kathy Webb. I'm at 46, what is it? I better not get lost. I'm on County Road 36 in Trent Lakes. Our road got renumbered for 911 a while ago. So anyway, I'm the current president of the Lovestick Lake Association. I'm representing approximately 40 residents and cottagers on Lovestick Lake. Lovestick is a little unique in that there are 3 townships surrounding it. While this application before council tonight is in Selwyn, it will have huge impact on everyone on the lake. The water does not know where the boundaries are. Lake Association is dedicated to preserving the natural beauty, water quality, and ecological health of Lovestick Lake so that it can remain a safe and enjoyable resource for current and future generations. We continue to have many concerns regarding the application to expand this trailer park. Some other members of the association are here, either in person or patched in via Zoom links, and wish to speak to some of these concerns themselves. I will conclude by saying it's our sincere hope that council will carefully consider all the reports and recommendations from the experts reviewing this file and exert your powers to ensure that all the bylaws are followed in the event that this project does move forward. There are several places in the review documents that I keep seeing referred to as either site plan control or holding provisions. I would like to know what kind of assurances there are that these will in fact be followed and what kind of oversight or consequence there may be if not. Thank you.
Thank you. Per, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yeah, so through your worship, as stated earlier this evening, the next stage to the approval of this project is site plan control. There's a holding symbol before building permits can be issued for the park model units that are going to be on the sites. Park model units are regulated under an Ontario building code. You need a foundation permit. And in order to get that permit, site plan control is applicable. And if I said anything wrong here, the chief building official can weigh in. But so that is the next stage of the development is site plan control. And under that is a legal contract, both under the Planning Act. And so there'll be requirements in there to build the expansion in accordance with the plan submitted. There is financial securities posted as a result of that site plan agreement, which is one enforcement technique. I don't know if Robert, you want to weigh in on possible other enforcement methods for site plan.
Yes, through your worship, there is additional provisions under the Planning Act where there's penalties and offense. We could essentially charge the property owners if they fail to follow the requirements under the site plan control agreement. We can also cancel the agreement if they fail to comply with it. So there's 3 options there through the Planning Act, Section 41 in particular, which deals with site plan control. So we retain securities to ensure that the development is completed in accordance with the plans. And if they fail to do that, then we can utilize the funds in the securities to do restoration on the lands, the owners can be charged. And there is a penalty section of the Planning Act. So those three mechanisms can be used to support site plan control.
Is that sufficient, Kathy? Thank you. Ma'am.
Hello, thank you, members of council. My name is Jacqueline Bedard. I'm here with my husband today to share some concerns. Our address is 2959 Forest Hill Road. I know we have heard many comments about the state of Forest Hill Road, and I do not wish to repeat, but also hope that my thoughts can be heard today from the perspective that the proposed new intersection directly abuts my driveway. While I have a number of concerns, again, my focus will be on the traffic and pedestrian considerations on Forest Hill Road. So the proposed new entrance to the trailer park from Forest Hill Road will create a four-way intersection at the north end of Forest Hill Road and the driveway to the Forest Hill Lodge and along Spring Lane. This four-way intersection comes at the base of a hill on Spring Lane and Forest Hill Road and at the top of a steep incline that must be traveled to exit the Forest Hill Lodge driveway. So just for some logistics, the vehicles exiting the lodge traveling south up towards Forest Hill Road from my driveway are unable to stop as they accelerate up a very steep hill. The hill is a 12-degree angle, and due to the escarpment, vehicles traveling up the hill have very poor visibility on either side of the intersection when coming up to the top of the road. The current benefit with the situation that we have right now is that there is no road or vehicle traffic to the left-hand side when you come up our driveway. So vehicles are able to yield to that side should there be any hazards or oncoming traffic as you come to the top of Spring Lane. For vehicles traveling north on Forest Hill Road, there are a series of up and down hills as the driver will approach the new proposed intersection. The final hill, there is very much reduced visibility as you approach what would be the new intersection, and also braking would be a hazard to any vehicles that may be approaching behind that one, given the hills that are currently there. We've captured video to demonstrate the hazards and the dangerous nature of the intersection that have been included in the materials for today. Forest Hill Road is also not a typical road, standard road dimensions, which we have already talked about today. And there are also no shoulders for which vehicles can pass along. So all kind of adding to the difficult nature of navigating that road. I've read the traffic studies that were submitted by the trailer park and just have a few points to add on this end. The studies do not account for pedestrian traffic, for which there are no shoulders, as I've said, and obviously no sidewalks for pedestrians to safely walk along the 1.5 width road. The initial traffic study submitted was during the winter months, which rendered it essentially useless for the purpose of assessing the road's use for the seasonal trailer operations. And then the traffic study dated August of 2023 provides an account of traffic on July 14th and 15th of 2023 during what is referred to as peak hours of travel. Both of the time windows provided for the peak hours were 12:30 to 1:30 and 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m., which would arguably fall like during typical meal times, and you might not expect much traffic at that time anyway. It's not clear how these peak times were developed, and it would seem necessary for the purpose of an accurate assessment to capture the road use over the course of a complete weekend or week through the summer to assess the usage. For example, I can share and substantiate that on July the 14th, there would have been more than 15 vehicles traversing Forest Hill Road for access to the Forest Hill Lodge driveway, which was not captured in the road study. The traffic study instead assessed 2 1-hour increments and note that there were 0 to 1 vehicles during that time. I wish to highlight that this traffic is specific to the Forest Hill Lodge alone and does not capture any traffic that may have also been along Spring Lane that day. This number of 0 to 1 vehicles utilizing the road is also perpetuated through the 10-year growth proposal, which seems unreasonable, even if simply accounting for the additional service vehicle traffic that will be required for the new trailer park. It also does not align, given that the population between the cottages and trailers at the end of Forest Hill Road will more than double with the new sites, as our friend Noden had highlighted. The traffic study also does not account for the topography of the road, which I've already discussed.
If there were to be a proposal to allow the 40 additional sites at the top of the escarpment, it would only seem logical that the route might be otherwise routed through the inappropriately built road through the escarpment done by the Lovestick Lake Trailer Park team previously. I'd like to say that it's a necessity that anyone making a decision to proceed with the expansion attend to view the state of Forest Hill Road and the proposed new intersection in person. I ask that anyone who has not yet gone to view the proposed intersection in person, please do so and answer whether they would feel safe given the logistics of the proposed new entrance. Please do so by both driving north on Forest Hill Road and south up out of the Forest Hill Lodge driveway. It is a clear four-way at this junction. It is clear that the four-way junction at this intersection will be incredibly dangerous. One accident is one too many, and I would be wondering who would assume responsibility if something were to occur. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there someone that would like to speak to that? Per?
Sorry, yeah, I can jump in here, your worship, just briefly, and maybe I can defer to for some of the more technical aspects to our peer reviewer engaged. Nicole is here tonight. But in short, again, we acknowledge that through the review of this process, there is been some comment on the current state of Forest Hill Road. And those deficiencies will specifically, the design parameters of what improvements will be needed will be addressed at site plan control stage. With specifically regard to traffic volumes, as we've talked about, those the report, as Diana mentioned, don't recommend any particular intersection improvements such as at the 15th line, right? Or Highway 28 as you go further out, right? Off the 15th. No major intersection improvements are recommended as a result of the slight volume increase, right? But in terms of more the I guess we would call it the level of service of the road in regard to the road surface standard and some of maybe the more technical aspects, I'd ask maybe Nicole to speak to that.
Oh, sorry. Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Nicole Cameron from Engage Engineering. My company did a peer review of the traffic impact study by Asurza and the original one by DM Wills. So just to recap on the traffic impact study, the purpose of it is to assess not the road condition. It's to assess the numbers of traffic proposed from the development with the existing traffic and determine if existing traffic implementation is required, such as stop signs and traffic lights. But I did want to address your question on where the data came from. So a traffic impact study it looks at the traffic condition on the site, but it also, a lot of the data is coming from like the Institute of Traffic Engineers manuals. So for instance, proposed developments aren't always very site specific. They give generic information and generic numbers in those manuals to do your calculations with. In response to the peak traffic numbers, so Martin had collected the traffic data on those days that you mentioned. And the peak hours, it was just looked at like how many cars for every hour. And those peak hours are pulled from the traffic data. So that's all I can speak to as one of the people who signed off on the peer review, not the actual traffic impact study. But thank you for your questions.
Okay, and before we go to the next speaker, there has been comment about the condition of the road. And we do have Adam Tobin here, who is our Public Works Director. Is there anything you wish to add to that, Adam?
Through your worship. Yeah, we're not denying there's some geometric issues with Forest Hill Road. It is on our roads need study for some surface treatment. And we are working with the proponent through detailed design. We really don't have that detailed design, how that intersection would look or what exactly those road improvements look like at this stage. So.
Hi there, I'm Julie Metherall, 3214.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
I don't think he was finished.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. So yeah, as we work through the detailed design, we'll be able to kind of flesh out what exactly those modifications look like and any potential costs to those.
So what you're saying is there will be improvements made to that road and specifically at that intersection,
What I'm saying is on our roads need study, we've identified surface conditions,
right?
surface condition issues on that road. There's noted deficiencies with the actual road design, but given the low traffic volume on that road, we have many roads within the township that don't meet provincial standards. But given the traffic volumes and the number of incidents and reports we get, we kind of scale those back on what we're gonna do. So with this particular development, we're waiting on that detailed design to see what kind of improvements might be required with that, but we don't know that at this stage right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes,
Hi
ma'am.
there. I'm a neighbor of on Lovestick Lake, 3214 Spring Lane.
Could you give your name?
My name is Julie Metherall,
Thank you.
and unbeknownst to my neighbors, I decided to put up a couple trail cams between Thursday and Sunday, Thursday afternoon to Sunday. And I went over the chips quite a few times. I came up with 24 cars coming into Spring Lane. That's including trucks, bulldozers, oil trucks, what have you, and 49 leaving out of Spring Lane. I had a total of 9 pedestrians. I didn't actually recognize any of them. 1 dog, 1 motorcycle, and 1 all-terrain, 1 deer, 1 fox. And I stopped for a garter snake coming here. And as far as the road goes, I've never, ever been on this road, and this is not even peak time. I've lived here my entire life. I turn around, there's always a car coming or going. There's always a turtle I have to help across, a grouse with its baby. And I would rather have more speed bumps. To be quite honest, even my neighbors speed in. I'd like to see 30 miles per hour, whatever that's 40 clicks. It is a dangerous road, but again, there's more people. I'm not making this up. I've got the information to you. That's only 4 days. And nobody knew I threw these cameras up. But 49, 27, 9 pedestrians, people I don't even know walking, and people do come and walk their dogs and what have you. And that's without any other traffic. This is even peak time or our family coming up. That's all I had to say. I just had to work off of it. And as a matter of fact, I would have had a head on coming out of Forest Hill Lodge. By the time I went into first gear, there was a car ramming out some delivery truck. I'm surprised there haven't been accidents, actually. A lot of close ones.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I sympathize with the decision that you have to make. This is an incredible duty that's placed upon.
Could I have your name and address, sir?
My name is Doug Moffat. I live in Uxbridge, but we have a cottage. 25 years ago, we bought Rubus Island, and my family and I have lived there summer times all since. I really thank you for recognizing the people who are First Nation in our area at the beginning of the meeting. And I thank the gentleman who got up and so eloquently told us his side of the story. In 25 years, we have rented parking space and docking space from the Purvis brothers. And we were quite happy to do that. It was convenient for us, but we were evicted because my wife, the day that the great road building episode took place, destroying the escarpment, she took pictures, and we were then told, we don't want you here anymore. I think that indicates the level of real accessibility or acceptability of such a trailer park, because this road was built to get around the official plan. The region or the county of Peterborough official plan said no new trailer parks. Flat out. Wasn't a change of anything. And the only way they could make this an addition to the existing trailer park was to purchase the land at the top of the escarpment and create a road so it looked as though it was an addition. It is not. It's a new trailer park, and anything you're told that says it was existing, anything like that is not true. This is the great untruth that takes place in local land use planning because the councils are forced to do so. I was a mayor of one of the townships, and I know the difficulty you have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moffat. Does anyone want to make a comment to that on staff? Yes. Diana, I got it right.
Through you, your worship. I'm not staff, sorry, I prematurely put my hand up. I do want to remind everyone that we have an application before you, this specifically for the zoning bylaw amendment and of course also the official plan amendment. And speaking to the application itself is what we're responding to here. I appreciate that there's history. I appreciate that, you know, the community understands and knows other information, but what's before you is an application to amend the official plan and zoning to permit the development with all the supporting studies that we were required to prepare that have all been peer reviewed by the township and county's peer reviewers. So I would appreciate if we discuss the applications at hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, Lois Wallace on behalf of the Environment Council for Clearstonian White Lakes. My address on the lake is 1133 Little Duck Pond Road, Duro Dummer, where we live 6 months of the year. Environment Council is firmly opposed to the 40 new trailer sites, and we urge the township and county not to approve the applications for a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment. There are many reasons. Detailed concerns about high phosphorus levels have already been communicated many times. But quickly, I want to emphasize that more development almost inevitably leads to higher phosphorus levels with serious impacts. Phosphorus fertilizes the growth of harmful algae and invasive aquatic plants and depletes dissolved oxygen in the water, killing fish and other aquatic life. The ultimate result can be a dead lake. The Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks has stated that the water quality in Lovestick Lake shall not be degraded further, with good reason. The new sewage system for the development promises to reduce phosphorus emissions. But how can the lake community be assured that the system will operate safely over time? What independent monitoring will be done to detect and prevent leakage or failure, especially given that Selwyn does not have a septic reinspection program? We firmly support Lovestick Lake's demand for a lake capacity study. The lake was shown to be at or near capacity in a 1991 study by Trent-Severn Waterway. Imagine the development impacts, shoreline degradation, and increase in boat traffic in the 33 years since. Would the township please explain why discussion about a lake capacity study is only taking place now? Almost 7 years ago, the July 2017 project pre-consultation meeting called for a capacity study to be submitted as part of a complete project application. Why has the township not used its authority under provincial legislation to require that such a study be done long before considering approval of this development? And why are trout more important than the health of a whole lake and the other fish, food fish within it for Indigenous people and others? There have been capacity studies done on lakes that are not cold water lakes. It can be done. An at-capacity designation for the lake would give the township and county the ability to restrict certain types of development. It would not necessarily halt all development. Another serious concern is direct human impacts on the shoreline below the new development by the occupants of 40 new trailer sites. The project environmental impact statement and its addendum did not address the current state of the shoreline at the former Strickers Resort, which will be affected by the new development. This narrow band of shoreline appears to be degraded, and much of it is filled by existing trailers right at the water's edge. A naturalization plan has been recommended in the EIS, but there is virtually no space there to naturalize. The ES reports do not assess the direct human impacts on the shoreline and nearshore areas by the occupants of 40 trailers, their families and guests. At the inside, there could easily be an additional 100 people on a long weekend using the beach and other recreation areas close to the water. This will further degrade the shoreline, increase erosion and sedimentation, and damage water quality. This failure to assess human impacts on the shoreline is a serious gap. Such an assessment must be required of the applicant as a condition of approval. In conclusion, we do not see that need for this project has been demonstrated as required for an official plan amendment. This new trailer park is not housing, and there is virtually no evidence of community support for it. Did anyone speak in support tonight? No. And as was clearly demonstrated at the proponent's open house on May 3rd, 2023, and we heard again tonight from the Indigenous peoples, they have not been properly consulted. Any possible benefits of the new trailer park are far outweighed by the potential negative impacts on the lake environment. We also share Lovestick Lake's concern that these 40 new trailer sites are the thin edge of the wedge. The project documentation shows that the proponent plans another 300 sites. We are concerned that approval of the zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment applications would set a precedent for approval of many more sites in future. Again, we urge the township and the county not to approve the applications. Approval would not align with Selwyn's vision to be a progressive, sustainable community or with your value of being environmentally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Please. Please stop with the applause. Is there anyone that would like to speak to that? Diana?
Okay, thank you. Through you, your worship, all the planners would like to speak to it. So with respect to the existing shoreline, that is already developed and not part of this application, which is why it hasn't been considered. I appreciate that people are concerned about the shoreline, and it has been recommended through the EIS that some restoration be completed, but those details in that potential design has to come out through additional discussions. Like I said, the development on the shoreline is not part of this application. The development already exists. So we're not considering it because it's not subject to any type of approval at this time. 300 sites. I understand that years ago, an application for 300 sites was submitted. It's not submitted at this point. We're looking at 40. If through you, your worship. Yep. If an application for additional sites were to be proposed, this process would have to happen all over again. Planning does not set a precedent. Each and every application has to be reviewed and considered against the merits of the policy at that time. Just because an approval gets permitted today doesn't mean that approval for another development gets approved tomorrow. It has to be reviewed against the same legislation, the same policy. And so you can't just assume because one development is permitted, it's going to happen again. That's not how we operate in land use planning.
Thank you. Per, did you want to add to that? Oh,
Yeah, sure. Through you, Madam Mayor. I don't know that I can speak to all of that. That was quite a lot. But just a few points. So there was some concerns with the sewage treatment and how that is all monitored. So the environmental compliance approval that was issued through the MECP, so that's the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. It did have a number of terms and conditions attached to it, and the ministry is responsible for the reporting that's done on the system. They're going to be monitoring the construction of the system. Yearly reports need to be done. Any upgrades that are necessary as a result of those reportings need to be satisfied all through the ministry. And then there was a comment about a lake plan being implemented for warm water lakes, and that is true. You can create a lake plan for a warm water lake, and you can create official plan policies that incorporate that lake plan and address the recommendations of that lake plan. Typically, that's done through the municipality. So in this case, there are a number of municipalities that are impacted. And then it would go through a full consultation process, and then the recommendations of that study would kind of outline the related official plan policies that would then get added to the official plan through amendment. So that's typically how that that process would work, just at a very high level.
Thank you very much. Pear?
I'll just add a little bit because people seem to think it's funny that we're emphasizing lake trout lakes, but that's in accordance with provincial guidelines regarding at capacity studies. So it comes from Provincial Ministry of Environment regarding what is typically within the scope of an at capacity lake capacity study, right? It focuses on lake trout lakes and cold water lakes, obviously, because lake trout depend on cold water. I said in my preamble that, yes, we could just, as Keziah just said, you could do a lake capacity study for a warm water lake as well, but then there's no provincial guidelines to direct what that study would look like. Therefore, we would need to consult with professionals in the field as well as our stakeholder agencies and municipalities within Lovestick Lake. We're not, the township is not the only jurisdiction of, is not the only agency of jurisdiction on Lovestick Lake, right? So you would need to define what is it you're studying, what's the geographic scope, what's the variables you're going to measure, and then ultimately, as Keziah was leading to, was what are the official plan policies that are needed to control those variables if indeed it turns out that the lake is verified to be at capacity. After that official plan amendment is put into effect, then a zoning amendment also comes into effect to implement those official plan policies. As I alluded to earlier, the zoning bylaw is applicable law when it comes to development under the Ontario Building Code Act, right? So anything that doesn't meet zoning, our building department can't issue a permit for, right? So that's how it follows. You need the study first, then the policy under the official plan, then your zoning regulations, which would then control development under the Building Code Act.
I believe there's a couple of other agencies that would be involved. The county would also be involved in that. And so would Parks Canada, because it's the Trent Severn Waterway, where there's been at capacity assessments done and determined on warm water lakes. It has happened on lakes that are firmly within one township. We don't have that here. It's a lot more complicated because there are 3 townships plus the county. And the development, just as Pear said, would be restricted. It wouldn't, you can't say you can develop, but you can't. Like, we couldn't do that. We would be challenged. And it's something that if we're to go forward with an at capacity assessment study, it will have to be through resolution by the townships of Trent Lakes, North Kawartha, Selwyn, and Peterborough County. So there are a lot of people that would have to agree to go down that road. And I would imagine it would be time consuming. We're probably looking at the way things move, the wheels move. We'd be looking at 2 or 3 years down the road.
7 years have been wasted.
Well, I can't answer to that because it's the first I've heard about that, and I've been on council for a long time. So it hasn't come to my attention as a member of council.
Through you, worship, specifically on that point, the pre-consultation meeting, the notes that we have do not indicate that the conservation sword that we were required to ask for one. It said we were authorized to ask for one. As Diana has remarked, I agree with her comment that site-specific lake capacity assessments that are multi-jurisdictional in nature is not appropriate to ask one development site to initiate and complete that. That would be a municipal responsibility to do in conjunction with the other stakeholder agencies. And that's why it hasn't been initiated through this development application.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jeff Chalmers, 858 Birchview Road in Duro-Dummer. And I'm here kind of wearing the hat of a member of the board of the Birchcliff Property Owners Association. Our president's online, going to speak later. I just wanted to speak to water quality. And I've been involved with lake water testing on Clear Lake since the mid-80s. I was on the Kawartha Lake Stewards Board for 20 years. The last 20 years after my career with the city of Peterborough, I've been acting as a building code consultant and teaching building code courses. So when I went focusing on what you had online and I looked at the Canadian Shield Consultants report on phosphorus, started looking at the numbers in it, and then I thought, what's going on here? Because they were talking about 38 additional RV sites, and tonight we're hearing it's actually 40. And we're talking the park model ones, not the RV sites, which this report talks about. The other thing that jumped out at me was the liters per day that they had in the report. Now, I agree with what they had for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units, because that's coming right out of the building code. But when it came to these RV and park model trailers, they were using a 425 liter per day thing in their report. And I thought, where did that come from? Because if I look at the building code, I'm looking at something in a table that refers to resorts, cottages, et cetera, but it's per person. And it's talking 500 per person. You know, and even a 1-bedroom unit in this same table would be 750. And I'm thinking to myself, how many people are in an RV? How many are in a park model RV? And I know with the numbers they've got in here, they're saying that there's less than one person per site, which just didn't make any sense to me. And so the totals don't make any sense. And I'm hoping that DM Wills, when they were doing their tertiary level 4 treatment unit designs for the new sewage system, weren't using the same numbers. Because in my mind, the numbers should be much more in the daily design sewage flow for the whole development. And so that's just what I wanted to concentrate on, because I'm involved with, you know, water temperature, phosphorus testing, E. coli testing, dissolved oxygen testing. I'm doing it all on Clear Lake, and we're downstream of this. And with my work with the Kawartha Lake Stewards, I know that when we look at the phosphorus levels that increase through the summer, when you look at all down through the system on the lakes tested and in the yearly reports by Kawartha Lake Stewards, you'll see that the peaks are at Lovestick Lake in the Burley Channel. That's where we hit the peaks. And then the upper Stony waters mix. And by the time you get down to Clear Lake, the numbers have come down a bit. But even this year, like right now, we've got the weed growth is almost at the surface on Clear Lake, and the weeds are covered with the green filamentous algae already. And we're, yeah, there. I mean, and the waters, when I was growing up, I've been on the lake all my life. So I'm up in my 70s now. So when I was a kid, if Clear Lake got to 74 Fahrenheit, which is about 22 or so Celsius in the summer, that was a warm summer. I'm regularly measuring temperatures of 26 Celsius and more. And it's already at 22 when I was out doing my phosphorus testing a week ago. Already at 22 at the surface, 1 meter below surface. Like, that's bad. And I'm also a scuba diver, so I'm seeing what happens below. And I see what water clarity is just terrible.
Mhm.
And it's getting worse all the time.
Okay.
So
Is there
that's
anyone
my
that'd like
comment.
to speak to that? Yes, Diane.
Thank you, through you, your worship. So the study was submitted to the ministry for review. The ECA was issued because they concur with the results of the design brief. And in addition, the ECA was issued for 38 sites just to be monitored. The additional 2 based on the monitoring program, which is quite loaded in terms of what's required when and how it's sampled, and the years involved in it. They may allow, subject to positive results, the 2 additional sites. The ECA is also for RVs and park model units, so it considers both, not just one or the other. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just suggest that Robert Kelly take a look at the numbers in that report. It didn't make sense to me. when it came to the RV sites.
Robert?
Through you, your worship, when you're looking at the numbers in the Ontario Building Code, not including the cottage and hotel section that you're referring to, those are for single family dwellings. When it comes to trailer parks, there's public washroom services as well as showers. So the amount of utilization that happens in the actual individual units might be a little skewed. I don't know exactly where they came up with the numbers, and it's outside of the township's jurisdiction for that issue.
Yeah.
So I can't comment any further than that.
But again, whether you're flushing the toilet in your RV and it's going into the system, or whether you're going down to a public washroom and flushing the toilet or having your shower or whatever, it's still the flow per day, and it's always driven by the number of people.
So through your worship, again, just to reiterate what I think Diana and Robert were saying, this particular approval for this sewage system is not under the jurisdiction of the township. It's under the Ministry of the Environment. Ministry of Environment has reviewed the material submitted to their satisfaction, have issued the environmental compliance approval, which is essentially in like local terms, that's their permit to build, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes, sir.
Chad Tranter, Fire Road 2580 Willoughby Island. I'm speaking representing the Association of Stony Lake Cottagers. And if you were to draw a map, it extends all the way to Burley Falls and north-south Woodview all the way through to Gilcrest Bay on County Road 6. We're strongly opposed to this proposed development. Not only myself, but many of the viewers on Zoom right now are opposed to what's been going on. There's many great points have been made. And thank you, Council and your worship, for hearing our concerns. We definitely were not the first people on the lands and waters, nor will we be the last. We are simply stewards of these lands and these waters. And it's our job to make sure they're protected and development is sustainable. I know there's many concerns in speaking to our members of our association about phosphorus levels in the Burley Channel as they continue to rise. In addition to that, lake safety and capacity has been noted by many of our members around the Burley Channel, and it's only a matter of time before there's a serious accident and life is lost. I can only imagine when someone buys a property on a lake, they want lake access. Without access to the lake, people have to be getting their boats out to boat launches either on Lovestick Lake at the Burley Channel or at Kawartha Park Marina. One, with the traffic study that was performed, I doubt that it contemplates safety of people daily towing trailers with boats on them, having to get out onto Highway 28, either to make a decision to go left to Burley Falls and put their boat in there, or to try and get across the road with a trailer, potentially a big boat, potentially a small boat, and try and get across Highway 28 to Clear Lake, which borders on Stony Lake's waters. So, you know, we have major concerns around the Kawartha Park Lake Road and 15th line and its impact to traffic and safety of people entering the area and residents of the area. So please take our concerns into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anne, were you going to speak?
Yes, I had planned to speak.
I have to ask your name. I know your name, but I have to ask it again.
Sorry, Ed Ambler, 3130 Spring Lane North.
Thank you.
Lovestick Lake. I'm going to kind of adapt what I had planned to say because I want to fully endorse what Jacqueline Bedard said about the road. I don't need to talk about that anymore. And also David, who spoke first. You're entirely right. The road the road needs to be either rebuilt or fixed. If that is the case, we feel, and I'm speaking on behalf of my neighbors, along the shoreline of, from, Jacqueline's and Bedard's place, all the way down along the shoreline to almost the Lovestick Lock. There are 27 cottages and several permanent homes and 4 islanders. And we use that Spring Lane, which comes off, that's our cottage road. We use Spring Lane as our access to our cottages down 3 big, very steep hills. And we need a safe passage on Forest Hill Road. We're concerned about liability. We're also concerned about the condition of the road and lack of infrastructure. There is an area right at the top of the hill of Forest Hill Lodge, where there is a parking space indicated on a map. And if you can read the writing, it's extremely small. It says parking for trailers and guests. It is most inadequate, even for 40 more new trailer sites. Another issue that has appeared this past summer, which a number of cottagers commented on, the parking lot at Burley Falls has been jam-packed with cars, so much so that nobody else you can't get a parking space there. That never used to be the case. And we have asked several times, going through the lock, the people working on the lock said that a boat comes over from the trailer park and picks up people and takes them back to the trailer park. Our thoughts are that, and we certainly can't prove it, but why this parking lot is so full is that they are using a public parking lot to park their guests. The other comment is on that launch, the launch at Burley under Parks Canada and the Trent Severn has been in a poor state of repair for at least 20 years. It's crumbling underneath the water line, and it needs to be repaired. The trailer park itself, on the other hand, has an excellent launch. Why don't their people launch their boats within their trailer park? In closing, I'm hoping that the road is safe for our people on Spring Lane. And in closing, thank you very much. I'm sorry I've had to readapt this because everybody's covered a number of topics
That's fine.
that I intended to. I was not to cover the whole road. Thank
All
you.
right, is there anyone that would like to speak to Ann Ambler's concerns? Diana.
Thank you through you, your worship. I want to acknowledge the comments. I don't know that I can offer any additional response. I believe we've covered this. With respect to, again, the use and enforcement of other properties, I can't speak to that. At this point, we've prepared a plan that demonstrates there's sufficient parking on site and no additional docks will be provided. And if there is a boat launch, there are opportunities to to bring your boat either on site and use the docks that are available existing or one of the other available public launches. So I won't speak to the enforcement issue because that's outside of the discussion that we're having today. And that's more of a township matter for enforcement, if people want to have that discussion. But with respect to the parking area itself, the site plan does provide on-site and visitor parking as per the requirements of the zoning bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and through your worship, I'll just acknowledge Diana's comment regarding the enforcement issue, that would be a separate issue to be addressed through our bylaw enforcement section, right?
But it does give the opportunity to know that there are some problems, so it's worthwhile hearing. Yes, sir.
My name is Chris Waghorn. I'm Fire Route 7, Trent Lakes. I'm also on the board for the Lovestick Lake Association, and I'm speaking against this application. Thank you so much for taking your time tonight for us. So I have a few questions, and there's been a lot of great comments, so I don't want to bring up stuff, but we are talking about people, right? We're not just talking about a specific piece of property and land, and it's not going to sit vacated with 40 trailers on it. There's going to be people within them. And so when we talk about the impact of those people who are in them, this is why we are all concerned. When it comes to the road, when it comes to, and just hearing some of the comments just before I spoke, the boats, if they are not allowed to park in the trailer park currently, then where are they going to park? Are they going to park in this laneway that's being made on the top of the escarpment? And then will that increase the traffic on the road in and out with boats being towed back and forth on a weekly basis or on a daily basis or however they choose to? Because we are not enforcement of people. We are our people, and they're allowed to freely go and come and go as they please. So those are real concerns that we have on the lake. There's been all kinds of stuff about phosphorus, and I'm not going to enter that. But the other point, and my kids both have worked at Burley Falls Lock, and my daughter currently is working at the Lovestick Lock. And so I can speak personally about the impact of that parking lot. And I know we're not here to talk about zoning or any of that stuff with the parking lot, but again, we're talking about people and the amount of confrontations that happen on a daily basis in that parking lot, and the staff are too busy to deal with it. They're dealing with the boats. That's their focus. They work for Parks Canada. They don't work for the OPP or any other agency. But those are real concerns. And we have seen in the past where there were concerns with people in the Burley Falls swimming area in the past during COVID, and there was major concerns. The OPP were involved. So we are a community. And I think that's something that we need to remember as well, that we are all part of a community. And some of these decisions that are going to be made with regards to this application affect the community. So, and I actually have one further question. It's regarding the pileated woodpecker. So it sounds odd, but if there is a nest and you're not allowed to touch that tree for a number of days, what happens if there are, or months or weeks? What happens if there are new nests between now and the building process? Will that delay further processing of that? Because I understand, because I know and I see on a daily basis a number of pileated woodpeckers, hairy woodpeckers, and other forms of woodpeckers in the neighborhood. And I'm just curious about that one specific thing.
Hair.
Yeah, so I'll speak to through your worship, in regard to the environmental impact study and some of the species on the site. Again, the Conservation Authority has made some recommendations that'll be implemented through the site plan control agreement. And again, as reiterated in my earlier comments, the property owner is subject to the Endangered Species Act that is not administered by the township. That's a provincial piece of legislation. And there are requirements for a landowner to comply with the requirements under the Endangered Species Act. Specifically on this site, the one site, the species is the butternut tree, right? That was identified on the site plan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
All right. So I don't know if there's anyone else that wants to speak, but I've got 51 people that are waiting online. So is everyone done here? We can move to the online. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at you. With the exception of you, sir. Can I have your name and your address?
It's Jeff Webb, 4654 County Road 36.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone, for hearing our concerns tonight. I know we've heard about the number of studies that have taken place already for traffic impact, environmental, and so forth. And we've talked about the lake capacity study. I think probably everybody could agree that lakes have a given capacity. We're not maybe here to argue what that is, but there's certainly a carrying capacity. And in the handbook from Ontario, I mean, it deals primarily with lake trout, as we've said, but it also says it can be applied to warm water lakes. And there is some metrics that have been applied for boating capacity successfully in Ontario, particularly in Seguin Township. There was a zoning application that was went up to the OMB, that's PL 151021, and it was denied on the basis that this lake was at capacity based on a capacity of 1.6 hectares of lake per dwelling that were on the lake. So there are metrics that can be applied regardless of whether it's a lake trout lake or not. So I mean, my question is, how does council make an informed decision on whether our lake is at capacity without having the data of a lake capacity study? Is 1,000 trailers too much? That seems like a lot. Maybe we should be concerned about that. 40? But so why don't we have this lake capacity study? I realize there are difficulties because of our unique circumstances being split among 3 townships and who's going to pay for it, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, I mean, if the lake is above capacity, do we just all sit back and wait for the lake to become eutrophic, the fish to die, and algae blooms are causing problems with our drinking water? And then say, oh, yeah, I guess it was at capacity. So again, why I asked the question, why don't we insist on having this lake capacity study done?
So I think it's already been spoken about that it involves more than one township, where with the other townships that had those studies done, it was it was within one township and we have 3. It would mean that the 3 different councils, actually 4, because Peterborough County would be involved, will have to have discussions to see if we go forward with this. And I would imagine for it to go forward, they would all have to agree. So we're not at that point yet. It's something that could go forward. You know, we could start those discussions, but at this point in time, as we sit here, is in existence. So it's something that we are going to, all of us. Terry is the mayor of Trent Lakes, who's online right now as county councillor for the planning department, and his township, as well as North Kawartha, Selwyn, and Peterborough County will have to determine if they want to go forward with this or not, because it can't be done in, you know, we can't have exclusion of one of them. We would all have to agree.
Right, we understand that. But I mean, that doesn't stop the fact that the lake may be at capacity and we don't know about it because we haven't done the homework. So
it's a chicken and an egg thing.
I mean,
wow.
This, so
Yeah.
it may be difficult to execute, but I think it's something that should strongly be considered. And in the research, it also doesn't mean that all development is shut down. Other townships have implemented an at capacity and still allowed people to make additions and put docks and decks and things like that. So it doesn't shut everything down. The township can decide what rules they want to make if the lake is determined to be at capacity.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I don't know if anybody wants to weigh in or.
Yeah, I'll agree with the statements made, and I think I've made that point clear too. I just warn council that, you know, it could potentially lead to many restrictions on prohibitions on development, but the exact restrictions or prohibitions would need to be determined through the policymaking process, right? Where exactly are we within the variables that are going to be studied, if they're going to be studied, number one. And then what policies do you put in place in order to control those variables from contributing to whatever's making that lake at capacity, right? What are we looking at in terms of at capacity? What variable is it? Is it the water quality? Is it the boat traffic? Boat traffic is another issue that it's not municipal jurisdiction really. It's Trent Severn Waterway jurisdiction, right? Who's going to enforce that? The OPP?
Yeah.
Right? So there's a number of questions that need to be answered.
It's not a simple thing. All right.
Yeah, and so yeah, I'm just reiterating. There is a number of questions, and I think those have been raised, and council has been raised, is aware of those questions that the public has, and so it's to council now. I think the public here is asking council to consider this issue, and it would be up for council to debate that.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Gordon McPherson. I live at 273 Fire Route 10 on Stony Lake. Professional engineer, retired. Stony Lake is the recipient of all of the water that flows out of Lovestick, as we all know. And so water quality is an important issue to all of us for many reasons, some of which have been articulated already today. I just want to make a couple of quick comments, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. With all due respect to Mr. Lundberg, it sounds like the principal argument against understanding what the capacity of Lovestick Lake is the fact that it's difficult, it's complicated. Numerous jurisdictions apply. Provincial regulations apparently apply to cold water lakes in terms of capacity studies, not warm water lakes. But the fact that it is difficult may take some time, may take some cooperation from a number of municipal authorities and other non-municipal authorities, should not be the reason that we don't seek to understand capacity before we approve adding load onto an already stressed environment. I think the eloquent consultant for the proponent proposing to add capacity to the trailer park has said numerous points in her discussion that they're only adding sites for trailers and not making any change to the waterfront or the dock space or anything else that's directly impacting the water. We all know common sense tells us more people on the water means more load on the water. Previous speaker spoke about the weed growth on the lake, the algae growth on the lake, and how early it's appearing. That's a consequence of increased nutrient load in the water. There are other factors, of course, but a significant factor is nutrient load. That comes from greater human activity on the lake. And adding 40 trailer sites, as we all know, the people are there because they want to be on the water. They don't choose to put a trailer there not to be on the water. They're going to be on the water. They're going to add load. I ask you in summation, just consider common sense that you can produce reports by paid consultants, even peer reviewed, that will advocate for whatever position you want. I would not rely on the check boxes on the reports being done where the reports state that there's no impact to conclude that there is no impact. There certainly will be an impact, and it will be a negative impact. And I just ask you to apply common sense. You have 40 new sites, they're going to have people, those people are going to use the water. Even with a septic system, there's going to be an impact, and it's going to be a negative one on a system that we know is already heavily stressed. So please use your judgment, you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here.
So,
Here.
yeah, so through your worship, I just as a bit of a counterpoint, the studies are submitted in support of a development application based on different parameters set by different provincial agencies. And the development is weighed against those, specifically in regard to the septic system, which is the point of controversy here. The Ministry of Environment has reviewed the development application and found that this system is supportable based on their information. They are the ministry that puts out at capacity guidelines for this size of septic system. They're the approval authority for this size of septic system. They've deemed it appropriate to issue the permit for this septic system and that it will not cause undue impact to the environment at this location. That maybe not be the satisfactory answer to the public here today, but that is how we viewed it, and the approval has been issued in support of this 40 site development, trailer park development.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Bob Wisnip again, 540 Fisher Lane. With respect to septic systems, I believe Diana Sachs instigated a survey, and in that, actually, it was an investigation. And of all of the ones, I'm not sure the number of septic systems that were inspected across Ontario. I think she lost her job. Mr. Ford got rid of her as a result of this. But septic systems, regardless of the type and where they are, have a tendency to have some kind of a failure within 10 to 15 years. It may not be a total failure. It may be one of the baffles that goes over the top. In some cases, it was people driving over them, et cetera, et cetera. But septic systems aren't the ultimate answer. And I think she lost her job as environmental commissioner over that.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there's, I would like to go to the people who are online. And Tanya, are you ready to, or are you looking after it, Angie?
Yes.
All right, so the first person that I've got online to speak is Jane Delamere. Is she online? Jane Delamere.
Jane, if you're online, please unmute and liven your screen. We'll just keep an eye out if she
shows
checks
up.
Yep.
Okay. Jim Davies. Is Jim Davies there? Mr. Davies, can you please tell us where you live? Unmute, please.
Actually, I think that's Mr. Reed. Sorry.
It's Mr. who?
This is Mr. Reed that's live in the screen, so he's a little bit later on the agenda. So I'm not sure if Jim is available. So we'll just maybe move on.
Okay, Madeline Sloan. If you're there, please unmute yourself. No?
She was online. I'm wondering if a few people have dropped off, maybe.
That could
Yeah.
well be.
Yeah.
It's okay. We had 54. So Tony Graham. Is Barb Rimmer there? Jennifer Wartzman. Is Jennifer there? Angie?
She is here. I've just asked her to unmute.
Okay.
I have nothing to,
Nothing to add?
I have nothing to add. I think that the people that spoke against the development made it pretty clear that it was not a desirable development for water quality, lake capacity, and I also have concerns about where these boats are going to launch from, and what the Kawartha Park Road will look like with all these trails if they go that route. So I agree with everything against that has been said so far.
All right. And can you give us your address, please, Jennifer?
2607 Hiawatha Lane North.
Thank you very much. Sydney Sloan.
Mm-hmm.
Is she there, Angie?
Sorry, searching.
Okay. Roberta King.
Coming up.
No. David Stevens and Sherry Salter.
Hi, David Stevens.
Yes.
Address is 3136 Spring Lane North, and I won't add anything to this. Everyone's been very open and honest about their feelings towards it, and I think they've done a good job at making their recommendations. So we just wanted to make sure that mine was on record, as well as my wife Sherry Salter, that we're opposed to this development.
And just from a personal standpoint, I'm just very nervous. Because Forest Hill Road is the only access out to Highway 28 or anywhere else that's used a lot by my daughter who cycles, by myself who walks, and it's going to become virtually impossible to use that road safely as a pedestrian or a cyclist.
Okay, thank you. Sam McLean.
Hello, Sam McLean, 3182 Spring Lane East, and I'm very much opposed to this. I think it's worth noting that there have been many great comments made, and the one thing I would like to add to that is that what we're basically dealing with is two opposing opinions on this. One is driven by financial gain, and the other one is to preserve the quality of the lakes around us and the water. Briefly, what I'd like to say to council is you are the stewards of this community, of these lakes, and it is upon you to turn this down in good faith for the number of people that are opposed to this development. And as you've seen, there's been nobody in favor.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, Sam. Thank you very much for your call. The next people are Arunas and Marilyn Plakadis. No. Andrew and Carolyn Marston. Abby Formosa.
Hi, I'm the environmental director for the Association of Stony Lake Cottagers. Oh, my address is 1896 Morrow Lane. And we are also, I wanted to just have it on record that the ASLC and myself are very opposed. And yeah, I won't reiterate everyone else's points, but yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Susan Fisher. No,
It's too bad.
and Bonnie Castle. Peggy McCallum.
Peggy McCallum. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, can you give us your address, please, Peggy?
Yes, 27 and 28 Fairy Lake Island on Stony Lake. Can I just say that there's a message in the chat saying that some people can't unmute. So that may be why you haven't had people responding. So I don't know. I just wanted to draw your attention to that.
Thank you.
I am a member of the Stony Lake Cottagers Association, and I endorse what they said. And I was very interested to hear the other comments tonight, which I won't reiterate. I just wanted to say one thing, and that was in response to something that the consultant for the applicant said, which was that, you know, we're only here tonight to talk about the proposed change in zoning and the proposed change to the official plan, which I took to mean that we should be looking at it strictly on the four corners of the application. I think with respect, I disagree. I think council needs to look at everything in its context, and we need to look and listen to all of the comments made, which really relate to the context in which the council needs to make a decision, not just something in the abstract. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matt Sutherland. Jamie Avery.
There's Christine Avery. I'm going to send you a panelist request if you want to participate. She's just joining.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Christine Avery. My address is also 27 and 28 Fairy Lake Island, Stony Lake. I would just like to go on record in opposition to this proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Philip McDonald.
Hey.
No. Sorry, Diane, who?
She's later on in the list.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, Diane Bogey. So are we hearing from her and we'll go
Sorry,
back?
she's number 30 on the list. I
see
think we're
that.
just at number 18.
All right. So Philip McDonald wasn't there.
That's right.
Correct?
Sorry.
Casey McCallum.
It's actually Kathy McCallum.
Kathy.
My address is 610 Island 21, Stony Lake. I'm very much opposed to this development. I'm really quite surprised at your reaction to the individuals who are talking about the misbehavior of these individuals who are applying for the development in the previous years, that isn't being taken into account when you're looking at possibly introducing 40 new places. So I'd like you to put on record that I am very much opposed to this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Bedard. You're here and you're there. No. Okay. Jennifer Lisowski. No. Wyatt Lisowski. No. Kaylin Lyons. David Lyons. Is he there?
Nope, don't see any of those names. Yep.
Jacqueline Lyons. Jennifer Beatty. Jim.
Hi there.
Oh, hi.
So Jennifer Beatty, 380 Carvest Marina Road, also a member of the Association of Stony Lake Cottagers. Just opposition as well. I just don't think that the council can be prepared at this point to let it go ahead with the lack of information. If something is difficult, I think that's your incumbent as elected officials to keep working, keep digging, and consider that this is a long-term decision, longer than perhaps your term on council. So please do your best and consider everything that was said today. There were some really eloquent people. So I appreciate it, your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim Cranius.
Don't see that one either.
Kevin Lasowski. Elizabeth Drake. Nobody there. Now we're at Diane Bogey. I know she's there.
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you give us your address, Diane, please?
Certainly. Diane Bogey, number 121, Fire Route number 9, Buckhorn, on Lovestick Lake. I'm trying to not repeat what has been said tonight. Coming at this stage of the game, it's difficult not to reiterate some things that have been said. So if I do, would you please just bear with me, and I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can. First of all, I want to say good evening to your worship and councillors, planners, and a special and other dignitaries who have attended this meeting. And also a special shout out to Angela Chittick, who has fielded many calls and sent us many informative letters to help us through this process. My family has been on the lake for 62 years. We built it from the ground up. We camped out in pup tents and slept in the back of a station wagon. Little by little, nail by nail, we saw a cottage come to fruition. So we have a very special connection with the lake, as I know most people do. My mission this evening, I was tasked to stress the imperative need of having a lakeshore capacity assessment conducted on Lovestick Lake. You may ask why this is so important. Well, to be blunt, if we don't want this vital link in the water chain called the Trent Severn Waterway to become a weed-choked, algae-filled morass devoid of fish and other aquatic life, we need to begin now. Phosphorus is a killer, and it triggers algal blooms that are not only harmful to human health, but disrupts the aquatic ecosystem, endangering fish populations and thus the food chain. Lovestick Lake, only 15.4 kilometers or 96 miles long, and island shorelines of 11.7 Ks or 7.25 miles, is only 44% navigable due to shoals, islands, marshlands, etc. It has the highest phosphorus levels on the whole Trent Severn Waterway, and they often exceed the provincial guidelines of 20 micrograms per liter. Development is a key and known contributor to TP or phosphorus loadings. Testing has been done on the lake for over 2 decades in conjunction with the Lake Partner Plan, Kawartha Lake Stewards Association, volunteers, etc. My husband and I have been water testers for the past 6 years, and the phosphorus levels continue to increase. I realize that undertaking a lakeshore assessment for capacity is a huge, huge undertaking, but it's absolutely necessary. I've looked at a number of studies that were done in the past, and there is literature that describes a lake that was studied that had 4 townships, if you can believe it, involved. Well, it was a monumental effort to get all 4 townships together, and then the incremental agencies that were required. In our case, it would be the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority, the MNR, MOEC, and on and on. I don't disregard the fact that it will be difficult, but lake associations are there to help with the process. We need to combine our efforts to make this happen. There are other mitigating factors that are standard to require a lake assessment for capacity. And of the 6 that are listed in the handbook, we follow and have 5 that would contribute to the strategy. So that's about all I'm going to say this evening. I do want to reiterate just one point, and that is that we find it difficult that we could possibly believe and have faith in the proponents to fulfill all the required duties and compliances that are necessary for those studies to be completed in the undertaking of their expansion. They have an abysmal track record of following procedure and law and have done illegal things in the past. So I realize that is the past, but it makes it very difficult for us to go forward and have faith that they will do what they're supposed to do. In summary, I thank you very much again for taking the time to hold this very special meeting. And that's all I have to say. Good evening.
Okay, thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
Is Maria Dorado Smith online?
I don't see her. Sorry.
I don't see her, sorry. Christine Avery.
We heard from her earlier, actually.
Okay, you're down there twice. Bill Reed.
He is on the line, so just
Yes.
off, Bill.
Yes, Bill Reed. You can hear me?
Yes, I can. Can we have your address?
Yes, address is, our cottage address is 2003 Island 1, Stony Lake. Cottage that's been the 6th generation currently enjoying the cottage there. It is part of North Kawartha. We have indicated that tonight there's numerous boundaries on Lovestick Lake that impact the lake. One of the comments I have is if this application was for a cottage lot, there are minimum size requirements for a cottage, to put a cottage in place if you were trying to segregate the property into cottage lots. I see quite a huge dichotomy in the fact that you allow so many equivalent of cottages with a trailer park to be put in place, whereas if this was a cottage lot development, it would be much fewer allowed items. The second point really goes towards the comments that there was no proposed shoreline development. And before Parks Canada, there's no application for increased dock space. And as has been mentioned by others, that these 40 lots of 40 units would be on the lake, and they're going to want and will definitely be using the lake for fishing, water sports, canoeing, and the major concern I have is this is also part of the Trent Severn Waterway. There are very narrow passages for the boats under that going up and down the Trent Severn Waterway. To allow this to proceed increases the number of people that will be exposed to dangers, either if you're transitioning the Trent Severn Waterway, or if you happen to be one of those 40 trailers that is out on the waterway, you are putting yourself in danger. And I hope that no one here approves this application in the future, that someone ends up getting hurt or killed because of the increased traffic on this lake. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Is Carolyn Anderson there?
I don't see her.
Okay. John Huckey,
I don't see John either.
Carolyn Bartlett,
Carolyn is on the line. If you can unmute.
Good evening.
good evening.
Thank you for taking the time tonight. It's been
Caroline
long.
Anderson, Island 7,
Oh.
Stony Lake.
Sorry, we're
Emergency
actually,
number
it's
4,
Carolyn
434.
Bartlett. Sorry, it's Carolyn Bartlett
Oh.
to speak. Sorry.
So, Carolyn Bartlett, we can barely hear you.
I apologize. I will speak as loudly as I can. My name is Caroline Bartlett. My husband Wayne and I live at 123 Fire Route 9 beside Diane Bogey. I'd like to thank you for the time spent tonight and appreciate everyone's patience and diligence in this process. Many points have been spoken to. However, I do want to touch on a few that I think may also be relevant to this conversation. I had an opportunity to review the documentation submitted in support of this prospective adventure, and I question how this project is considered to be supported by the Ontario legislation for growth in the Golden Horseshoe and building strong rural communities, when this proposal does not provide any permanent housing whatsoever. Whereas, if the view is that it increases recreational opportunities or possibilities for the residents, I venture to speak to the fact that we already have significant number long-standing good citizens, taxpayer businesses that are compliant with all legislation already serving our communities in the surrounding areas. And I would like to also understand how these plentiful options have been not considered with respect to the potential financial ramifications of added competition, when in fact many of our long-standing services are not at capacity and are struggling to make their ends meet, considering our constant increase in costings. They too are providing employment and taxpayers to this community, and their overall contribution to our communities should not be disregarded for the benefit of one. I would also like to mention and support those statements by previous speakers where I too was at the open house and also did not have my questions answered by the consultants. It has been over a year and still to no avail. The key point, and I understand it is outside of the purview of this membership, is that I did ask for examples or references of facilities already utilizing these new, and as I quote Miss Wills' words herself, not loved by many communities, this new technology. I have yet to see any references that state there has been satisfactory results from communities that also have this system on the Canadian Shield. I have seen references for Kentucky, but we're not in Kentucky. So I would like to keep this in mind when we then refer to some of the other components of this presentation. One being, there seems to be a significant investment in this process. As mentioned before, it has been many years with many amendments, many consultations, many consultants, many lawyers, many developers, and much investment. With the proposed implementation of new roads, new septic, new water, new landscaping, construction, renovation, as well as permitting, I ask that you question this. As a business person, is 40 new lots going to provide a profit, or is it break even, or is it a loss leader to get us involved, very much like the specials at the grocery store, so that we end up having paved the way for consumers to increase our exposure to further development? It is only a rhetorical question, but definitely food for thought. As our civic leaders, we look to you to lead. Now is a crucial, critical, and actually pivotal time for your leadership. Lead by example. You should actually consider this as a challenge of honorability. Spearhead this capacity study for our beloved lake. Yes, we have 4 counties. That means the cost would only be 1/4. The workload has already been agreed to be shared by the numerous volunteers and our speakers that are here today. True leadership is that which is done for the best interest for the generations to come. Be the leaders we have elected. But please do not forget, it is not just for communities. This will give us all the opportunity to show our value to our Aboriginal and First Nations people. Include those leaders in this assessment of their lake's capacity, because as was previously stated, they are the ones with the most rights and the livelihood that has been given to them, and it is our obligation to assist them with this continuity of their traditions. I ask you, on behalf of us all, thank you for your time and your very careful thought today and tomorrow and in the days to come. I leave you with this. If we, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and your constituents, if we cannot entrust you to advocate for us and our future generations to do what is right for our most precious natural resource, then who takes on this mantle? Keep in mind, do not discount character witnesses. Character witnesses and character references have been used in many different legal systems. The concept of the word escapes me, the concept of dissuading one from acknowledging that a leopard does not change his spots should not be just put aside, because those with many, many more years of experience in history than you and I around the table have spoken with firsthand knowledge and understanding. We do not require consultants or experts to tell you what is right under our doorstep. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Thank you. We will now go to Carolyn Anderson. She was on the line. Angie?
I did not.
Okay, can you hear me?
Is this Carolyn Anderson?
Can you hear me? Yes, it
Can hear
is.
you. Could you just restate your name and address, please?
Okay. Absolutely. It's Caroline Anderson, and I'm on Island 7, Stony Lake, Davis Island, and my emergency number is 434. We aren't a fifth generation person on Stony Lake. However, we've been there for over 40 years. I am concerned when I hear the presentations tonight that there are a couple of things that jump out at me. One is, it sounds like the road study is, I wonder who paid for the studies and have you been viewed by somebody who was unbiased? Because
you lost her. Oh,
I think we've lost you, Caroline.
well, let's move on. Maybe
Okay.
she'll come back. Jenny Chambers.
I don't think she's here that we can
Okay.
see. Yep.
I know now you're a little gun shy, right?
Yeah, I know.
Because they're
Sorry.
not there,
Yeah.
they're there.
Yep.
Alex Parker.
Don't have them listed.
Okay. Okay. I'm here. My name's Alex Parker. I'm on Taylor Island on Stony Lake and oppose this project. I'm a member of the Association of Stony Lake Cottagers. And I think all of the reasons have already been stated this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Allen.
Tracy is here. Just unmute yourself, Tracy.
Hi there. My name is Tracy Allen, and I'm on Dodworth Island in Stony Lake. I just want to go on the record that I oppose the development. I also support the townships conducting a warm lake assessment. You might have that name wrong, but I do support further inquiry into the capacity of these lakes to support developments of this size. I think especially as we start to see the impact of climate change, this is going to be really critical for the future to ensure we have sustainability in mind with these kinds of developments. So I just want to say, I think it's incumbent on the townships to undertake that work. And then I do also, a few other people have mentioned this, but I am curious that there is a history of infractions with this applicant building a road without a permit. And there's been references to this, I think the staff and the applicant, so the representative for the applicant referred to different bylaws that would be able to address any future infractions, but that clearly didn't happen with the incident of building a road without a permit. So that kind of gives cold comfort as to what would happen in the future. So I do think that's an important consideration. Thanks. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Kelly and Joel Kennedy.
There is a Maddie Kennedy. Is this the same Kennedy?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can we have?
Yes, sorry. This is
address?
Kelly Kennedy. 2577 Island 36, Stony Lake.
Thank you.
And I just also want to go on record to strongly oppose the development and urge council to consider at minimum a lake capacity assessment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Erica Schwengers.
I didn't see that name.
Okay. Margaret Bentham.
I didn't see that name either.
Okay. Patricia Bourne.
Didn't see that name either. Yep.
Marie Miskin.
Mr. Miskin is on the line. Please unmute.
Okay. Yes, Murray Miskin, 1945 Fiddler's Lane, and also Island 2 of Stony Lake. I'm here in my capacity as president of the Birchcliff Property Owners Association, which represents owners of properties on the south and east shores of Clear Lake. My first point is that our First Nations should be involved in actual communication and full consultation before any consideration is given to this proposal. And I'm shocked that this still hasn't happened quite some time after an initial meeting where this was put forward, and it was made very clear that there'd been a problem with this communication and it needs to be open, and it hasn't happened. They haven't talked. My association is very supportive of the Lovestick Lake Association, who are the most affected, but all of our lakes are interconnected and we're all affected by the phosphorus levels that would be created by an additional 40 home sites in an area that's already very high in phosphorus. I commend the applicant for planning an upgrading of septic and other systems, and that should be done ahead of approving any expansion. Their track record for the trailer park has not been a good one, and they need to show some good faith by taking steps to improve the poor systems that exist presently on the property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candace Markovich.
I don't see her name on the list but
Judy Scotchmer.
don't see her either.
Gail Peters.
I don't see her either.
Ashley Sutherland.
Don't see her either.
It's not a hockey game tonight, right?
No.
Just curious. Shannon Thibodeau.
I don't see Shannon either.
Thomas Lindgren.
Thomas is online. If you can unmute.
Yes, Thomas Lindgren here from 2001 Stony Lake Island 1, a neighbor with Bill and Kate Reed. Would like to go on record that my wife, Sydney Sloan, and I are very much opposed to this proposed development, and thank all the previous speakers that have spoken very well against this proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Judy Trantner online?
I didn't see Judy's name either.
Jessica Ross.
I didn't see Jessica either.
Jenna Charlton.
I didn't see her name either.
Nicole Davis.
I didn't see her name either.
Jane Jennings. Jane Jennings.
Didn't see Jane.
Troy Brooks Hill.
Didn't see that name either.
John Jentz.
Didn't see that name.
And Heather Thompson.
That's correct. Didn't see the name. Sorry. And we do have a question from Matt Sutherland as well.
Matt Sutherland. Okay. Matt Sutherland, unmute yourself. Give us your address.
26 Fairy Lake Island, Stony Lake. It's actually not a question.
Matt, sorry to interrupt. You're very it's very muted. Could you speak very close to the mic? Sorry, go ahead, Matt. Could you try again?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
That's
Oh,
better.
that's better.
Okay. No, it's just Matt Sutherland, 26 Fairy Lake Island, Stony Lake. I was on the list there to speak in opposition of this. I missed my time. But I just wanted to go on record to confirm with everyone else that I am opposed to the proposed developments of Sick Lake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's the end of the list. So I'll now bring it to council. Is there anything that any members of council have questions about? Well, we have the consultant here and staff members. Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Dennis, with regards to the road and the MTO, why would they not allow an entrance or allow them to use the existing entrance to the trailer park when the traffic studies have said it's such a small volume? Kind of counterintuitive to why they would not allow it there versus moving it to a road that needs a lot of work.
So through your worship, Diana may have more to weigh in on this, but this application goes back a number of years before I was with the township. Pre-consultation particularly was held many years ago in 2017. I can only say that MTO would have applied their regulations in regard to a protected corridor of Highway 28, looking at whether or not they would support access via Highway 28 and what improvements may have been needed there. I know, like along provincial highways, they prefer not to have entrances to those or limit the number of entrances to a provincial highway. And it may be that the existing entrance is sort of legal non-conforming, so that they don't want to entertain any further traffic at that site. Diana, do you know anything more about that?
Through you, your worship, I concur with what Mr. Lundberg is saying. In addition, it's been in our experience over the past many years that MTO is taking the position of no new entrances off their corridor. And of course, they're very particular with any entrances in proximity, particularly within 14 meters of their corridor. I believe in the past that there have been a lot of developments where the entrances have to be closed. Homeowners displaced as they expropriate land to expand their highways. I think this is a more efficient way for MTO to ensure that if they need to expand the highways, that they have opportunity to do so and not allow future access or use of access off their highways.
Councillor Koulis.
Thank you. Can you just clarify the types of archaeological tests? I heard there was 2, but what were the types of the tests conducted?
Through you, your worship, stage 1 and stage 2 assessments were completed. The initial assessment was completed prior to us being retained. And then based on the comments that we received from the public, we advised our client to continue on with additional investigations for the balance of the land. And of course, we took lead from the archaeologist being the expert in the field of where they need to do the additional testing.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Boyko.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sennis, I have a couple of questions. I guess the first one goes to through you to Per. I've read all of these reports. Thank you for the summary of the reports. That was really helpful. But I went back over the last few weeks. I've been reading all of the reports. On page 8 of Kevin Dugay's June 2022 report on revised planning justification report, it contains the following statement: there will be an impact on lake capacity arising from the proposed development, being an expansion of an existing seasonal residential trailer park. So Kevin Dugay, who's a respected planner in our area, says there will be an impact on lake capacity. So I was just wondering what comments perhaps you could make on Mr. Dugay's assessment.
I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of Mr. Dugay or what he was referencing in terms of at capacity. I think we would need to ask him that in terms of fleshing it out. What exactly is he speaking to when he talks about at capacity? What particular variable? From that short statement, I couldn't make a guess.
Okay. I don't,
Sorry, I'm having trouble pushing the button, Your Worship. I
me
concur.
every time, don't worry about it.
I concur. I wouldn't speak on behalf of what Mr. Duguay was alluding to without the context, and of course, without him here to be able to speak to his own words. We have submitted a brand new planning justification report. And while we appreciate and understand that lake capacity is a big concern of the community, and it's not to say that it's not something the municipality can move forward with, but it shouldn't be borne on the cost of my client to ensure the lake capacity of the entire study. It's a bigger endeavor, and as I had mentioned, it's the responsibility of the municipality. There's no policy in place currently in the official plan. So the terms in which we would even identify the study it doesn't exist.
Okay, that's
Further
interesting.
question?
Yeah, I do. I have I don't want to just a couple more if you wouldn't mind. I looked at the Peterborough County's official plan and the current official plan that was approved in June 2022. And on page 169, it said that 6 lakes in Peterborough County are currently special policy areas. 5 are listed as moderately sensitive, and 23 lakes in Peterborough County are listed as at capacity. Do you know if all of these 23 lakes that are listed as at capacity are all cold water lakes?
That would be Keziah that could answer that. Can you go to the microphone so we can hear you online, please?
Sorry, through you, Mayor. So all of the lakes that are listed in the county official plan are cold water lake trout lakes, and we get those, we get notices from the Ministry of Environment when a lake has been determined to be at capacity, and then they've been added over time to the official plan.
Okay, if I could follow up. If you get notification that it has been put at capacity, does that mean that a capacity study assessment has been done?
Again, through you, Mayor. That means that the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Natural Resources they collect the data throughout time, and they make that determination within their ministries.
Okay, thank you. It's interesting, when I looked at the Ontario's current Lakeshore Capacity Assessment Handbook, right on page 2, it says, it must also be emphasized that water quality isn't the only important factor that should be considered in determining the development capacity of lakes. This goes to the question I'm going to bring to you. It says factors such as soils, topography, hazardous lands, crowding, and boat limits may be as or more important than water quality. That comes from the Ontario government's policy statement. So when you were saying that just looking at phosphorus is one thing that is done with these lake capacity studies, but if we were to ask for a lake capacity study, that we would have to say the various factors that we want actually studied. Is this what you were referring to?
Exactly. All through your worship, exactly. So the primary focus, if you read the document in its entirety, the primary focus of the Lake Capacity Assessment Handbook deals with phosphate loads in terms of protecting oxygen levels in lake trout, cold water lake trout lakes, right? That's not to suggest that they don't have a few phrases scattered throughout the handbook document, such as you quoted, stating that it's up to local municipalities should they choose to conduct a lake capacity study in another setting, that we couldn't bring in other variables and study those. However, again, that would need to be determined, right? You need to scope your study, right. The variables involved, so that both the variables and the geographic area in which the study was to be conducted would both need to be defined.
Okay. Thank you for your indulgence. I have a couple more, unless anyone else would like to. I read the ORCA report, and it said that its technical staff note that soil stability was not reviewed. And so I guess I don't know who I'm answering, but it says soil stability was not reviewed. This is a quote: the trailer sites and vegetation removal extend into the 6-meter erosion hazard, and the sewage effluent will be pumped uphill through the erosion hazard. An assessment of these impacts was not provided. So I was confused by that. I wonder if this assessment of these impacts were ever provided to Orca, or you could put more light on what exactly they are worried about in this statement.
So through your worship, I would just question the date of that particular comment because there's several iterations of reviews and comments that have come forth. So it just depends on, and there's been many iterations of the project as well as a slope stability study was also completed. And the setback is adhered to with the latest version of the plan, right? So I would just question the date of those comments and which version of the plan those comments relate to.
Okay. Yeah, linked to that, the MECP report states, considering, this is a quote from their report, considering the extent of this proposed expansion and the related the hardening of the area to accommodate trailer pad expansions on the road system, the MECP also has concerns regarding the management of stormwater runoff. Stormwater runoff, is that something that we should be concerned with, and has that been addressed in the study? So I don't know. Again, I don't know who I'm asking.
I'm just going to comment first. So thank you for your worship. A stormwater management study has been prepared and submitted and also peer reviewed. And so through the site plan approval, while we recommend a vegetative ditch to be forms the stormwater quality and quantity control through the site plan approval process, that's when the details of the engineering will come out. So we'll have to demonstrate exactly to the township how we're going to engineer and construct that ditch in order to handle the flows. So until the township is satisfied, they won't issue any kind of agreement through the site plan until we have demonstrated through the engineering and then subsequent to construction that we've met the stormwater quality controls and quantity controls through our recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I'm reading all of these reports and listening to all of your answers. I'm getting an incredible education, so I appreciate that. I have only two more. I thank you for your indulgence. Ms. Holden, it says a lot addition related to the road. The applicant, you wrote on September 21st, 2022, and you wrote again on May 24th and 24, just a little while ago. The applications will require a related consent or severance application for the purpose of a lot addition, which has not yet been submitted. The lot addition serves to provide the subject property with road frontage and access from Forest Hill Road. So you've asked twice for that related consent. Have you received it?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. We have not received the consent application yet. However, the holding provision that is being proposed for the zoning does include a requirement that the consent application be applied for and that it be successful. So the holding on the zoning could not be released until that application has gone through.
Okay, I have only two more, I promise.
You keep saying two.
I know. And after these
questions ago.
No, I didn't teach math, that's for sure. A very good question was asked by one of the folks, and I wrote down this quote too, when you said the septic system is not loved by municipalities. And so I'd like to ask, why don't municipalities love the system? And has there been the second part of the question, is there an example of this system that you're talking about being used in the topography that we will be talking about at Lovestick Lake?
So with respect to certain standards, if you have a septic system that is 10,000 liters or more per day, that is covered by the ministry. Anything less, then I will be speaking to Mr. Kelly. So this really isn't a municipal issue just because we're over the 10,000 liters per day. So we need approval from the ministry, which we received. Municipalities, in my experience, and I'm not saying this is Selwyn, but they like the conventional 4-class system just because they've been around for so long. Tertiary systems, there's a lot of kinds, they can be very expensive. So really it's not that they don't like the system itself. They just don't have a lot of mechanisms in place apparently to enforce it. But this being the case, because it's the ministry, the enforcement is through the ministry. And so there's a lot of monitoring that's going to be required over the next 3 years. They specify what we have to monitor, when we monitor it, and for how long, and the different samples and how they're taken. So all of that data is going to be provided to the ministry. And so we have to continuously show positive results to make sure that the system is functioning properly. You know, I want to reiterate that the system has to work. You know, there's a lot on the line for my client and its customers as well, right? So the system has to work. There are other examples, not specifically for this topography, just because it's so unique. But we did provide examples through our consultation plan, and we gave examples to the township and county through a resubmission of other sites in Ontario that have utilized this type of system. It's not unique. They've been around for a long time. They're just incredibly expensive, so people don't usually use them. It's really when you have confined spaces like this that you have to look at a tertiary system.
Okay, I think I'm beginning to understand. Thank you. I want to ask about First Nations questions. The First Nations representative that we had.
Your 2 questions.
This is my last one, I promise.
Okay.
I said 2. Of course, I said 2 3 times, didn't I? To check the boxes that we need to check, and I understand the process, means that we must consult with First Nations. But consultation is not approval. Consultation is not agreement. Does the box get checked simply because the process consults First Nations? Or does the box only get checked if the First Nations approve? And
Through
support.
you, your worship, that is a very loaded question. As a professional planner, we consult with the public and we consult with agencies, and it's not a matter of checking off the box. It's the quality of that engagement and ensuring that we've had the dialogue, we understand what the issues are, and we've responded to those issues. The responses aren't always well received, and it might not be what people like to hear, but it doesn't make them any less true. Change is hard. People don't like change. We all live it. I live in the city of Peterborough. There's change happening around me. My neighbors are also going to go crazy, but we can't expect not to live in a community that just turns off its lights and says we're done. It's important that when we submit applications that we submit all the requirements that are put before us. The studies provide the guidance and they check the technical boxes to ensure that whatever we're developing is appropriate. We're all professionals here. So our work is our reputation. So we're going to submit work that we can stand by. That also extends to consultation. We have consultation when we know that we've reached a point where we believe that our work has satisfied the requirements. Again, it's not always that it's well received and people might not like the answers. So it's not just checking off the box, it's ensuring that we've engaged enough and that we've satisfied the issues. And it's also why council is the decision maker and we don't make the decisions, because we'll demonstrate to you how much we've consulted and that it's appropriate. With Mr. Noden, it's a little more complicated because there is a lot of feelings there. And so we've, of course, as I mentioned, retained our own Indigenous solicitor, and we will extend an invitation to discuss again to ensure that we are satisfying the concerns, but the information that we've received, the advice that we've received is that we have done everything appropriately to consult. You know, I don't often tell my clients to hire a solicitor for consultation, but this is important and I want to make sure we're doing it right. And so he did that.
Through your worship, I'll just add a little bit and take what I say, what I'm going to say with a grain of salt, because I'm not a lawyer. But there's more complexity with First Nations consultation in that First Nations are on par with the federal government. municipalities are creatures of the province, so we take direction from the province. The Planning Act specifically, if you read the letter of it as it currently stands, requires that we send public notice to First Nations that are within 1 kilometer of a development site. Most municipalities in Peterborough County have expanded that such that we don't restrict to the 1 kilometer anymore. We just circulate and involve Curve Lake and Hiawatha First Nation in everything starting from pre-consultation, and that's been the case going back since before I started here at the township. So it is a loaded question, as Diana said, and it's complicated, but we do our best to involve First Nations to the degree that would be appropriate to a municipal development approval.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for indulging me in your patience as I try to educate myself to make a good decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blunt.
Thank you, through Mayor Sens. I promise just one question,
Okay.
but I'm letting him count. I mean, there's been a lot of great information for council tonight, and I thank everybody for bringing it to us. That's the mayor's job to thank everybody at the end, but I
Yes,
also
it
want to
is.
thank you because it was a lot of information and a lot of things that I also read a lot of the reports, and it was good to bring some of those reports into context about how it affects the local neighborhood. But one of the points that Councillor Boyko brought up around the septic system is interesting. From what I read, they're going to actually pump from the lower cottage up to this new system. Now, is this new system, you say it's not a standard septic system, it's a tri-system? Tertiary system, is that like a Waterloo biofilter system or a Nuterra above ground machine that processes?
Through your worship, yes, I believe it's the Waterloo biofilter.
Waterloo biofilter.
Yes.
System. That's great. That's what I put at my property, and they are a good system. Thank you.
All right, well, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and the people that were online as well. I recognize that a lot of them probably couldn't stay for the duration. We've been going at this for 3.5 hours. And so I do appreciate hearing from all of you, as does the rest of council, as to what your concerns are. And the questions were very good. And that's one of the reasons that we were not prepared to go forward and make a decision tonight. We'll take this back, and another report will come forward from what has been given to us tonight, and we will be making a decision at a later point in time. So we have a recommendation in front of us that says that we will be receiving the information and that we are deferring our decision, and it will be coming back at a later meeting. So I need someone to move that recommendation. Moved by Councillor Boyko, seconded by Councillor Poulos. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. And we have a confirming bylaw, which is 2024-036. I need someone to move that. Deputy Mayor Black, Councillor Henry, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Henry, Deputy Mayor Black, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.